Well, good morning, everyone. I want to thank all of you for joining us today for our 18th annual DuPage Environmental Summit. This year's topic, and the topic changes every year, but this year's topic is agroecology and community-centered agriculture. Agro, what you say? Well, you're going to learn more about what that is here in a few minutes from our very own Connie Kohlmeyer and our farm manager here at the Conservation Foundation, Russell Soroki. My name's Brooke McDonald. I'm the president and CEO for the Conservation Foundation, and we're so glad you are able to join us today. We believe very strongly at the Conservation Foundation that regardless of where you live, what your social economic status is, that we all deserve, everybody deserves clean water, clean air, healthy food, and safe access to nature as a way to be healthy and happy. Our mission at the Conservation Foundation, and we're an organization that's been around for more than 50 years as a not-for-profit, our mission is to preserve and restore open space and natural lands, clean up, protect, and restore our rivers, streams, and watersheds, and promote stewardship of the environment. At the Conservation Foundation, everything we do falls into four major program areas. One is the preservation of land. We're a conservation land trust. We've been involved in preserving more than 36,000 acres of land throughout the Chicago region. We primarily work in DuPage, Kane, Kendall, and Will counties, but also do a little work in Cook, Grundy, LaSalle, and DeKalb counties as well. So at the core of our mission is land preservation. And here at our McDonald farm in Naperville, which you're going to learn a little bit more about later, that's a good example of the work we do. The other area is river and watershed protection. We're involved in cleaning up our streams, focusing on water quality, stormwater runoff. We've been involved with our partners in removing dams and restoring the ecological health of our local waterways here. Third area is community education and engagement. We do quite a bit of that. I know many of you are familiar with our Conservation at Home program. That's a great example of our education and outreach efforts. And the fourth area, which a lot of people are learning more about, is we grow food here at our farm in Naperville, at the headquarters of the Conservation Foundation. We call it the McDonald Farm, and the program is called Green Earth Harvest. You're going to learn more about that today, but it's a community-supported agriculture program, stakeholder-based, a shareholder-based program. It's something that we've been involved here at the farm for more than 20 years. So we'll be talking more about that later. So again, we want to thank everyone for coming today. You're going to learn more about how to get involved in the Conservation Foundation throughout the presentation today. So this year's summit will focus on how residents and communities can reduce their negative impacts by growing and sourcing healthy food locally, guided by and in tune with our local ecology. Everybody should have the agenda. We have great speakers. We want to thank all the speakers in advance for joining us today. We want to respect everyone's time, so we're going to stick to a tight schedule. And so please be back on time when we take our break at 10 o'clock. We're going to start sharp at 10 minutes after 10. All of this webinar will be recorded, and everybody will also be sent a link to the presentations. Just a couple of thank yous here before we get started. I want to thank Joy Hens from DuPage County. She's always helped us put these environmental summits together. Kyla Muhammad and Connie Kohlmeyer on our staff for helping with the speakers and the topics. And I also want to thank our, who we call our A-team. Allison Paul, Abby Beck, and Amy Phillips for organizing the event, especially Amy. She's put in a lot of time. You'll meet her in a minute, and we want to give her a special shout out here. So we're able to offer this event every year for free because of our sponsors, DuPage County and the Cool DuPage program. Thank you very much. The DuPage Foundation. Barb, thank you very much. You'll hear from Barb here in a minute. Christopher B. Burke Engineering and Bedrock Earthscape. So we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, which allow us to offer this program for free every year. And we've been doing this now 18 years in a row. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sheila Rutledge. Sheila is a DuPage County board member. She is chair of the county board's environmental committee. So Sheila, welcome. And again, thank you very much for all of your support.
Thank you, Brooke. Good morning to everybody. I'm going to have my dog here because he's going to start barking at me in a minute. So, but good morning, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to the annual Environmental Summit. Thanks to the Conservation Foundation for the hard work you've put into this summit, making it educational and enjoyable. And thank you to the DuPage Foundation for their support today and their ongoing support for local environmental projects. Today's topic of agroecology and community-centered agriculture really resonates with us. Roughly 5% of DuPage County's population is food insecure. Between supply chain issues and inflation rising, food accessibility is growing increasingly more important. The Conservation Foundation's efforts to grow organic certified produce for local pantries is commendable. Their dedication to healthy, reliable food is shared by the county. We dedicated funds to assist the foundation in growing this program, and we've provided millions of dollars to help pantries across the county to purchase high-quality food, and we've set aside additional dollars to continue to assist them this coming year. At today's summit, you'll hear from experts about how these agricultural practices can help not only you, but your community, impacting the natural environment, making it more sustainable, and improving soil health and water quality. I know you're ready to hear more and learn more about how you can change the world for the better. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed today's program.
Sheila, thank you very much. We appreciate all the county's support and the partnership we've had with you for decades on working on a variety of environmental and conservation projects throughout DuPage County, so thank you. I'd now like to introduce Barb Sapaniak. Barb is with the DuPage Foundation. We've worked with Barb and the DuPage Foundation, again, for decades on a variety of local conservation projects here in DuPage County. Barb, we've always enjoyed working with you and the foundation. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, Brooke, thank you so much. I always enjoy working with you as well. It's really great to see so many people registered for today's program. This is the 18th year that the DuPage Foundation has supported the Environmental Summit, and we're really proud to be a part of it because the topics are always super interesting, and we know that so many people benefit from the valuable information that comes from it. So the DuPage Foundation is a 501c3 public charity wholly focused on raising the quality of life throughout DuPage County. We currently steward nearly 400 charitable funds totaling more than $135 million. And these include several community-focused endowment funds to benefit particular fields of interest in DuPage. And there, for example, there's mental health, access to healthcare, emergency assistance, and of course, we have funds to support the environment. We also have approximately 150 donor-advised funds, and this is where donors have come to the foundation and established an endowment, and then they can recommend grants to support the organizations that are doing the types of programs that really align with their interests. And then we also manage the endowment and reserve funds for more than 60 area nonprofit organizations. The foundation has been in DuPage since 1986, and we've granted more than $85 million on behalf of our community and beyond. And more than half of that was in just the past 5 years. So basically, in a nutshell, we work with donors to help them to be effective and efficient givers to the causes that really matter to them. And then we also work with the local nonprofit organizations and support them through our grant making. And then we work to try to connect those donors to the organizations doing good work in our community. We have multiple discretionary grant programs, with our signature one being our Community Impact Grant Program. And this is where local nonprofits can apply for funding in the areas of environment, health and human services, education, and animal welfare. And through this grant program, we have distributed almost $1.3 million in grants specifically for environmental programs here in DuPage. So if you're a 501c3 public charity located in DuPage and primarily benefiting DuPage residents, you may be eligible to apply. The applications for our environmental programs are due by 5 o'clock on September 6th. And if you want more information, our grant guidelines are available on the foundation's website at dupagefoundation.org. Finally, on behalf of the DuPage Foundation, I'd like to thank all of you for all that you're doing to ensure a vibrant and healthy environment in DuPage. And I hope you enjoy the webinar or the summit. Thank you.
Barb, thank you very much. Appreciate all your support over the years. What we do at the Conservation Foundation, we do because we feel very strongly it helps improve the quality of life of residents in the various counties that we serve. We feel very strongly that what we stand for helps improve the health of our communities and creates communities where people want to live, work, and raise their family. Amy Phillips is our DuPage County Program Director. She does a great job for us, and she is primarily responsible for organizing the Environmental Summit this year. So Amy, I want to give you a huge shout out and a huge thank you. I know you put a lot of work into this, and I'm going to turn the summit over to you at this point. Thank you, Amy.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Brooke. And again, my name is Amy Phillips. I'm going to be your host for the remainder of this, which is our 18th Environmental Summit. In this topic, this particular one, we chose a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts. So that's the integration of agriculture and ecology, or agroecology. Our speakers this morning represent a diverse set of expertise, from a nationally known speaker to local practitioners, policy experts to community leaders. And a few of the speakers even work with us. So you'll get to highlight some of the work that we do here at the McDonald Farm in Naperville, throughout DuPage County, and beyond. There will be seven presentations and conversations. There'll be a 10-minute break in between, where we're going to highlight some local resources that you might find interesting. Because this is a webinar, just a little bit of housekeeping, you will be able to ask questions in the Q&A. We encourage you to do so. We have somebody monitoring that, and we'll answer the questions as closely as we can, and we'll also have a little bit of time at the end to answer questions directly. For general internet safety, you should be able to only see what the presenters and moderators post in the chat, but just in case we missed a setting, please don't click any links that aren't posted by one of us. So with that, let's get started. Our first speakers are Connie Kohlmeyer and Russ Siraki. They are our colleagues at the Conservation Foundation, and they'll introduce you to the system of agroecology, as well as showcase how we are integrated into practice at the McDonald Farm. Connie is an instructor at the College of DuPage, as well as our agroecology educator, where she shares her 25 years of experience in organic gardening, small-scale farming, wild plants, herbalism, and among many other fascinating topics. And after her talk, she will be joined by Russell Siraki, who is our Green Earth Harvest farm manager, and they're going to have a conversation about how they're putting it to work here at the farm. So I hope you enjoy the conversation, and with that, I'll turn it over to Connie.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Just open up for me here and we'll get started. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate you being here to join us for learning a little bit about this big and fun topic of agroecology and community-centered agriculture, or agroecology, as we've been affectionately saying, agro what? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, give a little bit of an overview of what that means, and the type of information and stories and community organizations and projects we'll be hearing about in the community today. So I'm going to start with the overview, and then, as Amy said, I'll have Russ come and join me and tell us a little bit about some examples of agroecology in action here at the farm and the way we put that into practice. So if you have questions, as Amy said, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then Russ will join us and be able to answer a few of them here. So agroecology, when we see that word or hear that word, we can come to the conclusion that it has something to do with agriculture and something to do with ecology, and maybe those things are related somehow. And so that is true. That is true. The word has been in use for almost 100 years, but it actually started out as a melding of the words agronomy, or soil sciences, and ecology, but in relation to agriculture and how we grow our food. And so this agroecology idea, this is something that's in practice all over the world. So Brazil, South America in general, but Brazil specifically, has been a world leader in agroecology since the 1980s. And then in more recent years, India is quickly catching up and becoming a world leader as well. The United Nations has actually named agroecology as one of the tools it intends to use and implement in order to achieve their sustainable development goals, which is really exciting. And then in Australia and countries in Europe and Africa, they're gaining a lot of momentum as well. So we've got agroecology projects happening all over the world. And then here in the States, we also have at least 6 different agroecology degrees available in several states and the US Virgin Islands. And most of those are graduate degrees. So this is something that is present here as well. But we, generally speaking, as the public, just aren't really familiar with it. It's not part of our daily vocabulary. So that's not to say that there aren't examples of agroecology in action happening all around us in our communities. We might see it every day, but we're just not labeling it that way, or maybe not recognizing it when we see it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And that's actually one of our goals, is just to, let's talk about it. Let's learn a little bit about it, and let's see how we can apply it to improve our lives and our health and our environment and our communities. So I think, as Amy mentioned also, we at the Conservation Foundation have a really unique perspective on agroecology. So this is a really special word because it is so directly relatable to the work we do every day. So as Brooke mentioned as well, at the Conservation Foundation, we save land, we save rivers, we preserve our open spaces, and conservation and the health of our communities and our environment are very important. So that all sounds a lot like the ecology part of that word, that agroecology word. And then as a land trust that is based on a 60-acre certified organic farm, that especially, that brings together the agriculture part of that word. So we're in a really unique position to be kind of having this conversation, and we're excited to share it. I want to, before we go on with the agroecology, I want to also touch on community-centered agriculture and what that means. So Brooke mentioned a CSA, or community-supported agriculture, and that is a type of model where you can pay a little bit of money to a farm or a farmer at the beginning of a season, and then weekly or bi-weekly, depending on what you signed up for and what program it is, you get to pick up your share of the harvest. So that CSA model, it's a great model, and I would be remiss to not mention that our Green Earth Harvest farm share, our subscriptions are open right now for 2024, and they do tend to sell out quickly. So I'm just going to throw that out there, because if you're interested in trying this type of a model, now might be a really good time if you wanted to join ours. So community-supported agriculture is a great type of a program, and that is something that is part of community-centered agriculture. So that's the part that I kind of want to touch on, and what exactly does that mean? So when we're in places like DuPage County that are maybe, they're pretty populated, they're highly developed, we tend to think of agriculture sometimes as something that's kind of far away. It's kind of theoretical. We don't necessarily see it every day. It's sort of out of sight. And then we might go the other way and think, okay, well, but there's urban agriculture. But then we think that urban agriculture means specifically in the city proper. But then where does that leave us out in the suburbs, out in the collar counties around the city, or even further out and in more rural areas? So community-centered agriculture can happen in a rural area, urban areas, suburban areas, peri-urban, ex-urban, anywhere that people live, we can have community-centered agriculture. If there's a community, we can have community-centered agriculture. So basically what that means is growing crops right here in the community where the people are who are going to use or consume them. And now I'm saying growing crops, I'm talking about plants just for simplicity's sake, but that doesn't necessarily have to be only growing plants. It could be raising animals, it could be beekeeping, there are lots of types of agriculture. So just for simplicity's sake, I'm talking about growing crops. So in these areas, because it's community-centered, these types of this type of agriculture is right in the middle of everything. So it's highly visible. There's a lot of transparency. We can see what's being done and how things are being grown and managed. And then there tends to be a lot of community involvement as well, which is fantastic. So that might mean the community coming and purchasing items that are grown there on the farm, but it also might mean inviting the local schools to come for field trips, or maybe community members are volunteering at the farm or attending farm events. It could be, you know, a lot of different types of involvement and connection there with the community. So it's, there are a lot of relationships built in this type of a system. So it's a real know your farmer type of a setup, and we get to meet our neighbors. We're going to pick up our shares, or we're going to the farm stand. We get to meet a lot of our neighbors at these different events. So the other thing too about community-centered agriculture is supporting the local economy, because it's creating jobs in the community and we are spending our money in the community. So that's a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about when we say community-centered agriculture. And then I want to touch on the agriculture part of that too. It can be such a wide range of things. Participating in community-centered agriculture might look like participating in a school garden or a community garden, maybe a pantry garden where everything grown gets donated to the local food pantries. And you can also do this at different scales. You might be on a 60-acre farm in the middle of the suburbs like we are, or you might be growing some herbs in a pot on your balcony. This could be potentially gardening, homesteading. Maybe you have a few backyard hens if you live in a town that allows that, or you have a few fruit trees, or your hobby is growing your own mushrooms. So this encompasses all of this. When we talk about community-centered agriculture, we really mean all of those different types of agricultural activities that are happening in our communities. So it's a very exciting topic. I really enjoy this a lot. So go to my next. There we go. So back to that agroecology word here. We've already determined that it has something to do with agriculture, agronomy, ecology, and that is correct. So a logical conclusion then would be that this means we are growing our food using ecologically friendly practices, and we're caring for the ecology of the garden or the farm or our yards at home. And that is all true. That might look like things, you know, that we consider. Are we composting? Are we planting for pollinators? Are we providing for wildlife? Are we taking care of our soil? Do we have a rain barrel maybe, or, you know, saving water? So there are all different ways we can do that. But the really cool thing about agroecology is it goes beyond that. So agroecology actually moves beyond the garden or farm and considers the ecology of the entire food system. So what that looks like, or what that means, is, as an example, here at McDonald Farm, maybe we're asking questions like, what happens to the water as it leaves the farm? Is it clean as it's making its way back into our rivers and watersheds? Are we doing our part so that we're not contributing to pollution or algae blooms from too much nitrogen, or you know, causing any type of harm in our ecosystem or to our wildlife? So we want to consider what happens beyond the borders of the farm as well, or our gardens. So then we go even one step further. Not only are we considering the ecology of the larger area as a whole, the whole community and our region, but also not just the ecology of the land, but we get into the idea of a social ecology. And so what that looks like, it's asking questions like, what happens to the food we grow when it leaves the farm? So just like we're considering what happens to the water off of our property, what happens to this food that we're growing when it actually gets out into the community and leaves the farm? Where is it going? Is it reaching everyone who needs it? Using that water example again, if we have a river that maybe has a dam that needs to be removed because in order to let that ecosystem thrive, we might need to remove barriers in our food system as well. So when that food is going out to the communities, are there barriers that we need to consider that might be preventing it from getting everywhere that it needs to go? We may have some physical barriers in terms of mobility issues, or what about people in senior living or in hospitals? If someone is homebound or has health issues, what about transportation issues? Are they able to get this food? Are there other barriers, maybe language barriers and other things that we need to consider? We want to make sure that this food is getting to the people who need it. Another consideration is, are we providing culturally appropriate foods for the community? So in a lot of these things, we need to remember also that context is really important. Just like from one farm to another farm, the ecosystem of that farm may be varied. There may be differences. The ecosystem of one town to the next town, or one neighborhood to the next neighborhood, might be a bit different too. So are we including all of the stakeholders in these conversations and making sure that the needs are being met, and that the intention of this food getting out into the community is doing just that and reaching the people who need it? So this is a really cool map here from Green Earth Harvest and their Farm to Pantry program. The yellow star there is where McDonald Farm is located in Naperville. And the grocery bags that we see are different food pantries that we've been partnering with to get food out into the communities. So the next step would be to look at each one of those and where does it go from there? And where does it go from there? And is it getting everywhere it needs to be? Are these systems in place? Are they working? And then we can also consider additional things like, is it fresh and full of nutrients by the time it reaches people's plates? So one really important aspect of local foods is that, we talk often about saving on shipping and transportation and emissions when we're buying local foods. And that's absolutely true. But there's another side to this, which is the nutrition side. So if we picture this beautiful tomato vine and a gorgeous ripe tomato on that vine, the minute we harvest that tomato or we take it off of that plant, it's no longer connected to that living plant. So it's no longer connected to that life source, and it does start to break down. So the longer it takes to get from that vine, from the plant to our plate, that the more it breaks down and loses some of its quality, not just flavor and freshness, but also the nutrient content. All of that starts breaking down. So the closer we can source some of these things, and the sooner we can get it from plant to plate, the better in terms of our nutritional needs as well. And then we have other things to consider on top of this even. What about food waste? Are we doing our part to prevent food waste? So agroecology is focusing on the ecology of the entire food system, meaning the land and ecology and the social ecology as well. So it's a much bigger picture. Agroecology is generally referred to as a science, a practice, and as a social movement. And an interesting thing here is that these are not really standalone categories. This is all about synergies and connection and bringing these things together. So one really good example of this that I think is really special and important are some of our Nature RX programs that we have. We have partnerships with healthcare providers and different healthcare organizations in the community, where when we can kind of bring together some of the things from each of these categories, maybe spending some time in nature, doing some forest bathing or forest therapy, doing some organic gardening, maybe our Take a Hike program, all of these different things, and we can study those and actually scientifically measure the results in terms of lower stress levels and lower cortisol and improved mood and improved sleep, lower blood pressure. So these are scientifically measurable effects. So this all comes about from this partnership and collaboration between these different sectors, all of these different categories. So that's one thing. A lot of the projects that we'll be hearing about today that are happening in the community are touching on many things in all of these categories: a science, a practice, and a social movement. These are all important in agroecology. So as a science, agroecology prioritizes data, empirical data, and research. And so as part of that, it's also inclusive of different knowledge systems. And this is really important to note, because what that means is we want to be speaking to our indigenous friends in our community who were the original stewards of this land. And we also want to be talking to our new neighbor who just moved here from somewhere else. They both have completely different, varying, unique perspectives and knowledge that we want to include in the conversation. So we want to have our conventional farmers in the same room with our regenerative organic farmers, having conversations and sharing knowledge with each other. So this cross-sharing of knowledge and collaboration is incredibly important. All of those different sectors in agroecology, it's the idea of the same way that we want to increase biodiversity in our ecosystems and support a healthy, thriving ecosystem. That way, we also want to celebrate the diversity of our communities, and we want to bring everybody into this conversation so that we can get the best systems in place that are possible. So as a social movement, agroecology is empowering gardeners and farmers. It improves our food security and sovereignty, and it's promoting healthy, nutritious, nature-friendly growing practices. As a practice, which is what we're going to talk about with Russ here in just a minute, is actually putting some of this into play on the farm. So in doing that, we're promoting sustainable use of our renewable resources. We're valuing that biodiversity and ecosystem services, and we're favoring solutions that provide environmental, economic, and social benefits. So that's the other key here. It's a science, it's a practice, and it's a movement. And the main focus is our environment, our economy, and society. So I'm not going to read the details on this, but you'll all have the slides to be able to refer to those later. These are just the main topics to highlight. It's a science, a movement, and all of these, the environment, the society, and economy, all of these things are considerations in agroecology, and these are things we'll be hearing about today. So agroecology, who would be a good fit for getting involved in agroecology projects? You, pretty much everyone, all of us. So we need all of those different perspectives, and we value all of these different, all the different inputs. And then what kind of projects are possible? Just to name a few, the possibilities are endless. So we just need to start making those collaborations and connections, which is one of our hopes today, that maybe you'll be inspired to do something or start a garden or try something new in your garden, maybe native plants or maybe vegetables if you haven't done one or the other. Maybe you'll find some organizations to support and volunteer with. So we will be hearing about all kinds of different projects that will hopefully give you some really good ideas. And we're going to start with one that we've got here, which is our Green Earth Harvest program. And I'm going to bring Russ in. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll bring Russ in so that we can answer a few of those questions that we've had submitted.
Thanks, Connie.
All
Good morning.
right. Hi, Russ. There we are. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing wonderfully. Thank you. On this wonderful January snowy morning. So we're cozy inside and enjoying talking about gardening. So I love it. Thank you so much for hopping on. Thank you for agreeing to chat with us today to answer a couple of questions. We have, I know we've had a few things that have been submitted. We might not get time to answer all of them live. We've got about 10 minutes or so, but any that we don't get to answer right now in conversation, we'll try to maybe answer, you know, when we have time throughout the rest of the day. So we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. And if you don't mind, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I'm going to pull up our first question here quickly. So Russ, as I mentioned, is our farm manager. If you would like to share anything quickly, I'm going to pull up our first question.
Thanks, Connie. Yeah, my name's Russell, and I'm the farm manager for the Green Earth Harvest program. Currently, we're growing about 41 acres of organic vegetables that we provide to the CSA and a farm pantry program that we just started last year.
Fantastic. Yes. And as I mentioned, farm shares are open. That's always an exciting time of year. So it's like we're ready to kick off. We're ready to go. It's January and it's snowy, but we're ready to go. And I love that you guys are already working hard on getting everybody ready for the season to enjoy some of that good quality food we were talking about. Our first question that we do have here, I really like this. So somebody said, I noticed a giant pile of what looks like leaves when I visited the farm. Is that what that is? And if so, what are you doing with all of those leaves?
Well, yes, in fact, those are leaves and they're local. This year we were able to take in over 4,000 cubic yards from the city of Naperville during their residential leaf collection that they do every fall. So what do we use them for? Generally in a couple of ways around the farm, mainly as a mulch, that we spread the leaves at least 3 inches thick with our tractor drawn manure spreader. That's helpful for several of our crops, including garlic, plants in the Nebraska family like kale, broccoli, cabbage. And this year we intend to use it on more crops. We're looking at celery, fennel, celeriac, and even peppers. It provides several benefits for us, mainly preventing weeds, which is a big issue in organic farming. It helps to maintain the soil moisture in the fields and reduces the need for us to irrigate. The mulch also helps to keep the soils cooler, and that protects the plant roots from temperature extremes, whether hot or cold, depending on the time of year.
So, I'm sorry. So are you able to use that many? Are you able to use all of those leaves? Because I know that's a huge, that's a huge amount. So you're using it for mulch. Does that all get put out on the fields as mulch?
Well, we're not quite there yet. We do use all of the leaves that we get. It's a lot of leaves right now. They're applied as the mulch. What's not applied as mulch will get processed into compost on site. And that adding compost helps to raise the organic matter in our soil. It provides nutrients, improves the soil structure, and it even increases the water holding capacity of the soils in our fields.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm actually going to pull this next question because it ties in directly with what you're just saying, and it ties into the leaves and that organic matter as well. So this question says, organic gardeners and farmers seem to talk a lot about soil health and organic matter. Can you explain a bit about that? And how do we increase organic matter? What does it do? What does it do? So it's kind of a multi-part question there. We've got, can we explain a little bit about soil health and organic matter? How do we increase our organic matter, and what does that do?
All right. Well, organic matter is essential in soils. That's the basis for all of life in the soil. On our farm, we like to see the organic matter going up. Over the past 20 years, based on our soil test, it's gone up about 1.25%. And that's beneficial in several different ways, not just for our crops that we grow, but for the ecology of the site overall. So just some for instances, based off of the size that we farm, if you're able to raise the organic matter by 1% over an acre of soil, that allows you to increase the water holding capacity by almost 4%. So on our farm, we have 40 acres. So we're able to hold 660,000 more gallons of water over the entire site than we were 20 years ago. That helps tremendously, especially in times of drought, and supports the life in the soil, both plant and otherwise. Another benefit of high organic matter in soils is the carbon sequestration. Organic matter is based on carbon. So by having more organic matter in your soil, you're able to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. And for our farm, again, using like the number of raising the organic matter by 1% over an acre, that results in 8 tons of CO2 sequestration per acre. So for us, over our 40-acre farm, the increase in organic matter has allowed us to sequester about 320 tons of carbon, which is definitely a good thing for many reasons. This also supports biodiversity. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say it also.
No, not at all. It's such a great.
It supports the biodiversity because the increased water capacity and the improvement in soil structure basically creates habitat for soil life.
Absolutely. I was just going to add, I saw that there's a follow-up question that that ties into the same topic too. So before I go on to, we might have time for one or two more, but this one ties directly in also. Someone asked, is there a concern with the leaf mulch not being organic?
Leaf mulch being collected from municipalities is considered organic by the National Organic Practices. And I mean, it's leaves that fall off of trees, which are living things. So as far as I know, there's not any concern with that. Anything that would have been in there kind of dries up, breaks down. Plus, when we compost it and those leaves break down in the field, that helps. The end product is basically just organic humus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because of the time it takes for it to get to that point. It is considered safe by the time it's actually being used in the field. So it is allowed and considered in organic practices. Yeah, fantastic. We've got another question here. Oh, this is fun. It says, what is most exciting to you about your work with the Conservation Foundation through Green Earth Harvest?
Huh. I think I'd have to say that what really excites me is that our farm is pretty well positioned to be sustainable, not only environmentally, but socially, which is an important part of sustainability overall. You know, we talked about some of the soil building practices that we have here, and that those are leading to us becoming environmentally sustainable. But to be socially sustainable, we're trying to emphasize the connection of the human community and the ecosystem, because we are a part of it. The people that we grow the food for are essentials of the ecosystem, and we build community understanding of this relationship and try to enhance it in several different ways here. I guess first, that the Green Earth Harvest provides food that's local. Even though we're known as an agricultural state, most food that's consumed by us in Illinois is imported. We've seen in recent years that relying on a complex supply chain with distant origins isn't exactly a reliable way to depend on something as essential as food. Currently, we're providing vegetables to over 700 families through the CSA program, and more than 600 families through the Farm to Pantry program. So that's a big impact. Not only is it local, the food that we provide our community is healthy. It's generally accepted that the modern food system does a pretty poor job of promoting human health currently. We see it in the rise of chronic disease within our population, despite the fact that we're an economically prosperous nation. So many studies have shown that, you know, a heavy diet, or a diet that's heavy in whole plants, it's beneficial, and it could even be preventative in regards to many of the common ailments that we have, both physical and mental. Ultimately, healthy individuals are really at the core of a healthy community, whether that's people or otherwise. And then we also build community relationships here. Our CSA and the Farm to Pantry program provides access to this nutritious local food by those who have the means to purchase it, as well as those who don't. Last year, we not only provided food to the 200 plus CSA family, or sorry, 700 plus CSA families, but we provided that same food to over 600 families with the nearly 30,000 pounds of food that was donated last year. By considering both the social and environmental sustainability of the farm, we're really able to ensure that we're making an impact with what we do. And that's exciting to me.
It really is. That's a fantastic answer. I think you never get bored because there's always so much, there's so many different projects. So we don't have time to do more questions live. We do have other questions that came in that we'll try to answer in the chat. We have a couple that are specifically related. Just one comment too, really quickly. We have a comment from the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition. It says, wow, thank you for the tips on the compost use and increasing organic matter in the soil, and also using compost as a climate solution. So that was fantastic. I second that. Thank you so much, Russ. I'm going to give it back to Amy because I know we want to keep on time, but I really appreciate you jumping in here to have this chat with us. I appreciate it a lot. And thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, Connie. Take care.
You too.
The practical knowledge. Again, if you have more questions for Connie and Russ, please go ahead and put them directly that way. So the rest of our speakers are really going to help to illustrate what Connie so beautifully food system. And so now we'd like to open up to a conversation about a larger policy view level. Our next speaker is Liz Moran-Stelk. She's the executive director at the Illinois as farmer-driven And so they are there to empower both farmers and eaters to create food systems change. Liz, agriculture policy, and she'll share some of the success stories that ISA has had over. Welcome, Liz. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks to the Conservation Foundation for this amazing opportunity to join you at this summit. My name is Liz Moran-Stuck. I serve as the Executive Director of the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. We are a farmer-led and eater-powered alliance of folks who use their choices and our voices to shape a more just and regenerative food system. And what that means is, as much as we can, whenever we can, we use our choices to support and buy local and sustainable and organic food. But we know that we can't buy our way out of this food system. We also have to change the policies that are at the roots that keep and maintain the status quo of the agricultural system. So today I'm going to share a bit about what we do, about what agroecology means to us, why the food system is the way that it is, some challenges that farmers who are practicing agroecology face, the solutions that they've created with us, and what's coming up next. Before I go on, are my slides showing up and you can see everything? Great. So I want to start with a little story about, this is Ed Dubrick. He runs DuPage Ranch in Iroquois County, which is in East Central Illinois. And like Russ at Green Earth Harvest, he practices regenerative agriculture. And these are his pasture poultry. And Ed was selling local meat at the farmer's market in multiple counties. He lives on the county line. And when he would go to sell at the farmer's market, he would have to pay the same permits for selling meat, eggs, and dairy as a brick and mortar grocery store, like the Walmart or the IGA in the community. And so he would have to pay $50 or more for every single farmer's market every week, and have the county public health department come out and from each county to inspect his farm. So 2 years ago, he brought this challenge as a member of the Stewardship Alliance to our local food farmer caucus. And he asked, are there any other meat producers who are struggling with this challenge and can't afford this? And other farmers said, yeah, this is crazy. And so what they did was they got together and they decided to come up with a workable solution that would make it more affordable and accommodate the actual scale and risk that a small farm poses in the community. So that's what we're interested in, is scale and risk appropriate regulations. They created the Farmers Market Permit Act. And what that did was it made one central statewide permit for local meat producers instead of having to go to each county. And it capped the price at $175 for the whole year so that they could have an affordable way to sell meat at the farmer's market. And Ed organized the campaign. He spoke to legislators. He brought them out to his farm. He talked to other farmers. And with the leadership of farmers and then the support of eaters who took action and educated their legislators, we passed the Farmers Market Permit Act in last year, and it became law this year, and it saved the farm business and many others thousands of dollars every year in permits. So I just love this headline that it was in the local newspaper after Ed's work, which is Dubrick, not chicken, about cutting government red tape. So those are the kind of things that we're working on, is trying to make regulations and break down the barriers that farmers like Ed face. So when it comes to agroecology, Ed is the kind of farmer who does the practices that we all know are sustainable, right? Diversity, synergy, efficiency, recycling, resilience. And this is the stuff that happens on the farm level. But as Russ and Connie shared, agroecology also involves what happens above ground with the farmer and the community. And so as a social movement, agroecology also aims to transform the industrial food system to more just and sustainable, and to get rid of the systems of oppression that are undergirding our food system. And so that means responsible governance, and sharing knowledge, and having cultural and food traditions that are respected, and circular economies and responsible government. And these are the other pieces of the elements of agroecology that they can hardly be achieved without engaging in the political system, the legislative system. And so those are the kind of things that we help farmers and eaters navigate. And so what's happening on farms not operating in a vacuum, right? These are the 10 elements of agroecology. And the reality is that everything about food is impacted by policy and social systems and the decisions that are made. Who farms, how it's grown, by who has access to land, who ensures that our food is safe, how it's labeled, and so much more. And so what we have, none of you will be surprised that our current food system really values corporate profits over our communities, our local economies, our health, and sustainable agriculture. And we have a food system that's really concentrated now over the last few decades in the hands of a very few agri-food companies, and it's only a handful of companies that control everything that we eat, and they use their massive market power to exert political power. And so food and agricultural policy has been shaped by what's best for their bottom line, not necessarily what's best for our health or our communities. And so I like to share this. I think it's really important for farmers and eaters to understand that if you think of it, the food system is shaped like an hourglass. If you imagine that on one side is millions of farmers, and on the other, there are millions of people who eat their food. But the process of getting the food from farmers to consumers is dominated by a smaller and smaller fraction of corporations who squeeze both the farmers and the consumers. And so Dr. King reminds us, it's a good time to talk about Dr. King, that the power is the ability to achieve a purpose, whether or not it's good or bad, depends on what the purpose is. And so we think power gets a really bad rap, but it can be used for good or bad. And so we define power as the ability to act and make things happen in a way that helps families and people in our community and the environment and institutions. And so there are two sources of power in our society. One is organized money and the other is organized people. And we're never going to be able to compete with organized money, with agribusiness, food, insurance, pharmacy, who all work together and support each other. But we can organize people and our own money consistently and persistently. And we know that our power starts with building a community, understanding our issues, having solidarity. And so those are the kind of things that we do at the Stewardship Alliance. I also find this model to be really helpful to understand what we mean by power. So you can see that as you move from powerless to powerful, you go from being not on the radar to having a seat at the table. And so what we've been doing on different issues as we're organizing is trying to be very conscientious about not just getting on the radar, but becoming active participants in decision making. For instance, because of our work over the last decade on cottage food regulations, which is producing safe foods, food safely in a home kitchen, that's a place where we have a seat at the table. I'm going to keep moving along because I want to share quickly the couple of farmer challenges that farmers tell us about in our organization. As we know, this food system isn't made for farmers like Ed and Russ to be successful. They had to fight for everything. It's not broken, it's working perfectly to give profits to a handful of companies. And so farmers tell us that in relationship that land access, infrastructure, financing, technical assistance, relevant research, right? Because lots of research goes to corn and beans and how to use them, and not necessarily to growing specialty crops. Risk management tools, workable food safety rules, and labor. And we bring farmers together to develop their own solutions to those challenges. So for instance, farmers couldn't produce their own compost or sell it. So this is a farm in Western Illinois called Sunset Lakes Organic, who produces their own compost for their organic grain operation. And they weren't allowed to sell it to neighbors. So we had to go to legislators and share that story and change the rules to allow for this amazing, beautiful, healthy soil-based compost to be sold to other farmers. Another challenge is like farmers are only going to grow what they can sell, and you can't grow something in an island where you can't move it anywhere or don't have buyers. So infrastructure to move food is so essential. This is one of the a farmer collective in Central Illinois called Down at the Farms that is an aggregator and then sells into Chicago. And they need things like refrigerated trucks and transportation and all the things, cold storage in order to move that food. Another challenge was that food hubs weren't recognized in the law as a worker cooperative. So we went back to legislators and we talked to them about Illinois' cooperative law, which was 100 years old. And it really worked in the past, but it was not current for current economy. And so farmers wanted this law to include cooperatives for brewers, butchers, restaurants, food hubs, and food processing. This is one of those cooperatives in Southern Illinois called the Leaf Food Hub. Another challenge for those of you who are growers is that some towns don't want to see a growing structure in your backyard. And so there was a grower in Elmhurst whose town was trying to force her to take down her greenhouse. But if you grow in Illinois, we're in a growing zone where you have to have a covered structure in order to grow. And so we brought legislation to legislators to make sure that towns and communities and municipalities could not restrict the right to grow your own food, and that these kinds of structures were essential. So we helped pass the Right to Garden Act. There's so many more that we've, because of organizing, because of folks like you who've taken action, that have gotten real results. But I want to share what's coming next on our agenda. So what's next for us, one of the big, most exciting things we're very excited about is the Good Food Purchasing Policy. So Illinois and states and the federal government spend billions of dollars on food, and most of that goes to some of the worst actors in the food system. And we want to help change procurement rules so that instead of Illinois buying just the cheapest, most food that they can get, that there could be a values-based system which considers health, the workforce, the buying local, sustainable, and humane. So that the way that it's, and this would be evaluated by a third-party vendor. And what we've learned, Illinois passed a law about over 2 decades ago that was focused on local, but what we learned was that local alone is not enough, because local in Illinois includes a lot of production that we wouldn't consider as healthy or sustainable or humane. And so we want all of those things to be together. So the Good Food Purchasing Policy is a big thing on our agenda. The other is, last year we had an incredible success of winning $2 million for a local food infrastructure grant, which would help farmers like Marty and Down at the Farms move food. And we want that to be renewed. And then finally, I just want to share this map. So every drop of rain that falls in Illinois mostly goes down to the Mississippi. And what we have been sending with it is our soil and our pollution from farms. And this is what ends up happening, is this harmful algal blooms come because fertilizer is actually really good at fertilizing algae and water. Algae grows, it blocks the sunlight, it takes away all the oxygen out of the water. And then we don't have healthy water, we get hypoxic zones. And so we're trying to make sure that that this is a priority for legislators to fix our drinking water. And so we're going to host Healthy Soils, Healthy Bodies Lobby Day on March 6th. Please note that there's also the Farm Bill happening. And I know I don't have much time left, so we're also working on the Farm Bill. Please learn more about that on our website. And I'll just keep this up here. Thank you for the opportunity. Please buy local, become a member of an organization, because power and numbers matter. And hopefully we'll see you in Springfield on March 6th.
Thank you so much, Liz. That was awesome. I loved I love the tagline of your organization. And I think our next speaker will help to build on, especially this, what you described, the Right to Garden Act. I think that the next speaker is really going to kind of help bring that home and give some people some tangible things that they can do. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Gary Oppenheimer. He is the founder and executive director of ampleharvest.org. So we'll put that link in the chat, and please go ahead and check that out. Gary is a nationally recognized thought leader and in the hunger and food waste space, and he creates solutions that are sustained in impact and can scale to a variety of communities in real time. So he's going to share with us some of his tech and information-based solutions, as well as some ways that they can that gardeners can help to contribute to their local communities. So Gary, thank you so much for joining us.
Amy, thank you very much. I'm having a minor problem. It says you can't start video because host stopped it. Can you please?
Okay, there you go. So ask to start the video. So you should be able to start your video now.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Perfect.
it's lovely to see you.
Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for this invitation, the opportunity. And I want to say, Connie, I'm delighted to have heard about your thinking about food sovereignty and indigenous people. I'm going to be touching on that. Let me bring up the presentation and let's get this started here. 1 second, I apologize. Oh, I have to fix one thing and I apologize for that. Just so everybody knows, we did rehearse this, and yeah, I got the right button this time. Very good. So thank you very much. I'm delighted to be invited to speak, and I am a native New Yorker. I'm going to talk fast so that I can stay on time and everybody can get on to the break after I'm speaking. So this is what our landscape used to look like a long time ago. For many of you who are too young to know. And this is what it looks like now. We started recycling. We started taking care of the planet. We started not wasting as much. And yet with our food, we're still wasting huge amounts of food across the country. We are throwing a pound of food a day, or I'll put it another way, 40% of all the food and half of the produce in America is simply never consumed. And every pound of that's like 20 pounds of CO2 being released into the atmosphere as a climate change impactor there. It is a huge missed opportunity for the country. And all this food waste could have gone to food pantries and helped feed hungry families who don't get access to fresh food. This is particularly important for children who really need healthier food to both be healthy and to study better in schools. Food that would be donated could make a huge difference in making a community healthier. And it would be neighbors helping neighbors. And most importantly, because of reduction in healthcare costs, it would hugely reduce costs to the community, communities across the country. So America has 62 million gardeners, and we are all thinking on this talk here about farmers and agriculture, but 1 out of every 5 people is a gardener, not a farmer. So we're going to bring that into the discussion here. Ampleharvest.org works with 62 million gardeners in 4,000 plus communities in all 50 states. And by the way, just so you know, this is what Google gave me when I said, show me vegetables in a garden. It came up with vegetables actually doing the gardening. This is an AI generated picture. So ampleharvest.org is about thinking differently. I'm going to ask you to think differently about looking at problems, looking at problems from a different perspective. So we have all seen old pictures of taxi cabs. These are what taxi cabs look like today. And if you look in the 1950s and today, people looking for a cab, roughly the same thing. And the people looking for a ride aren't seeing a cab in sight. And the cabs driving around aren't seeing a passenger. This was not a transportation problem. This was an information problem, a disconnect between the need for a ride and somebody offering a ride. And along comes Uber and Lyft, recognizing that this was actually an information problem that could solve a transportation problem. Now, let's look at Uberizing hunger in America. Let's look at how we take that approach to thinking to reduce hunger and food waste and look at them as information problems. So ampleharvest.org, and I'm the founder and the executive director, our theory of change is very simple in that we think simple, but we think big. So our goals are always to reach people who want to solve a problem, educate them about the problem, enable them to solve the problem, and then get out of their way and let them do the good that they want to do. AmpleHarvest.org solutions are always simple. They always scale to any community in the country in real time and have lasting, sustained impact. So our belief is that you can't do it alone. You can spark an idea, you can inspire something to happen, but then other people actually make it happen. Bottom line is you can't do it alone. So quick look at the food banking system in America. The way it largely works is you have the food bank network, and these are, you're Feeding America, you got around 200 Feeding America food banks. You've got 33,500 food pantries, and food flows from that left, whether it's government food, donations, or whatever, through a food bank to a local food pantry and then to hungry families. That's how the food bank system works in America. The result is, and we've all seen this, you go to a food pantry, you've seen pictures, it's always jars, cans, boxes, but nearly never fresh food. So the 38 million people in America who go to a food pantry because they need help putting food on the table are just seeing that processed food and rarely, if ever, have access to fresh food. And meanwhile, 62 million gardeners, we have surplus harvest, which I'll get into in a minute. The kicker is that the gardeners and these hungry families were neighbors across America in every single community. There's a gardener living down the street from a hungry family. In many cases, the hungry people themselves are also gardening. The gardeners come in all flavors. They come in all communities. They are from urban, suburban, rural, small garden, big garden, all types. And gardens, well, they're huge. Collectively, we grow 11 billion pounds of surplus harvest in America that could feed 28 million hungry people. So Clara and Sean are actually real gardeners. On average, gardeners in America are growing 270 pounds more than they can use or preserve or share with friends. Now, frankly, if you have a garden and you've got 2 flower pots, you're not going to get 270 pounds. But the average garden in America is 600 square feet. That's not small. And we've always hated wasting the surplus tomatoes. When I was named CNN Hero in 2010, I got this email from somebody who was watching, and he had thrown out 8 55-gallon drums of produce the prior summer. That was a massive missed opportunity for his neighbors in need, and that's what AmpleHarvest.org sets out to address. So if you remember this slide from a few moments ago, the idea behind AmpleHarvest.org is to add to all the other food sources coming in, fresh food from 62 million gardens, bypass a choke point, which I'll talk about in a moment, get it directly to a local food pantry, and that's where the Uberizing stuff comes in. So the food goes from the garden to the food pantry to a hungry family's dinner table within hours on a same-day basis. So this whole problem, as I said, has not been a food problem. We were wasting a lot. It's been an information problem. We gardeners hated wasting food. The food pantries desperately needed the food. That's the environment. The problem is we gardeners were always told, jars, cans, boxes, no fresh food. You're not allowed to donate the food. And the food pantries thought they couldn't accept it. And worse, they thought they needed costly refrigeration and storage. Gardeners didn't know where to find a pantry or a good day and time to donate, and pantries didn't even know gardeners wanted to donate. The result is that whether it's a hungry family, senior citizens, veterans, whatever, only processed food. The choke point, the problem boiled down to, because of the time it takes food donated at a food drive to travel through the food bank system to a local food program to hungry people. It was days or weeks, which is fine for processed food and just doesn't work for fresh food. March of 2009, I woke up with an idea. May of 2009, AmpleHarvest.org rolled out. I realized this was a solvable problem. And that was the birth of AmpleHarvest.org, meaning we're 15 years old this year, so happy birthday to us. The idea behind it was to educate gardeners that they can indeed donate the food, then create a custom search engine enabling them to find a local food pantry, introducing just-in-time inventory logic, meaning the food comes to a food pantry a few hours before the hungry families do, and then get out of the way of the gardeners. So, Uberizing the food pantry system. We make gardeners aware that they can donate. We make the food pantries visible and accessible. And it's instead of having this where Sean could not donate food because the food pantry, the food system wouldn't accept fresh food, instead, and his food going to waste, of course, instead, he's connected to a local food pantry by ampleharvest.org that has signed up on ampleharvest.org to be found. And then the food goes straight from him and his garden to the local food pantry, to the hungry families on a same day basis. The hungry families are getting food fresher than you and I can buy in a supermarket. So this is a picture, by the way, of food donated by an urban gardener in urban Bridgeport, Connecticut. It looks yummy, to a local food pantry, and other samples of donations that have taken place. This is one I particularly love because, you know, I like eggplants. So how does it work? It's a website. It's that simple. It's an information-based platform. The gardeners come to ampleharvest.org. So food pantries say, we want to receive the donations. We'd like them to come, for argument's sake, Sunday mornings because we're distributing food Sunday afternoons. The gardeners find the food pantry on ampleharvest.org and they then take the food there. It's as easy as you donating old clothing to a thrift shop. You come to this, and you are the gardener, you come to the site, you say, I live in a particular location. This is the St. James Food Pantry. And all the information that the gardener needs to donate the food is presented. And this information is provided by the food pantry itself. So every food pantry that is listed has joined in to say, hey, I need this food for my hungry clients. We have produced something called Producepedia because, yeah, everybody knows what an apple is, but not everybody knows what kohlrabi is. I mean, I grew it one year and I don't even know why. So we give the gardener the opportunity to print out a page that describes, for example, kohlrabi or cauliflower or what have you. They then print that out. They take that with the food they're donating. That there is on the table next to the food they've donated. And that QR code on the bottom, when the hungry family comes in to pick up the food, they snap the QR code, and the same information that's on that page now goes home with them and the food. And they now know how to use the cauliflower, for example. So ampleharvest.org first looked like this. We've gone through several iterations of the site. Thanks to a wonderful partnership with Bonnie Plants, we did a total rebuild of our site and technology in 2021. This is what the site now looks like, but more exciting, this is what ampleharvest.org has looked like over the past 15 years. This is the growth. Every dot is an ampleharvest.org member food pantry, in Alaska and Hawaii are included, even if they're not on this particular map. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's really cool. But by the way, I'd like you to make a notice of that empty space on the left-hand side of the country. I'll get to that in a moment. So this is in your neck of the woods. This is in Illinois, surrounding Chicago. And this is just to let you see that, you know, we're there. And by the way, we're in Chicago too, obviously. I just selected the area around Naperville because that's where the foundation had an address.
As a member of ampleharvest.org, I'd like to thank you so much for your fresh produce donations.
We'd just like to take a moment to say thank you to all the gardeners and farmers who provide produce and fresh vegetables.
We are especially grateful for the fresh vegetables and fruit that is donated to us by area gardeners through the Ample Harvest program.
We are an ampleharvest.org participating food pantry. We just want to express our appreciation for the fresh produce that you provide.
I wanted you to see how much the food donated by gardeners across America is deeply appreciated by the food pantries that receive the food and then distribute it to hungry families. This is a game changer for 4,200 and growing communities.
We're very grateful to ampleharvest.org for providing us with some fresh food that our clients can come in, make selections like they were in any regular grocery store or farmer's market, and provide healthy meals for their families.
It's exciting to see as our clients come in and they see the pantry has fresh produce for them. Many of them would rather have that than some of the canned goods that we give them.
I'd like to thank you guys for donating fruits and vegetables. Our seniors really love them. They always go and grab the fruits and vegetables first before they even grab the canned food.
I want to say thank you to our community and to Ample Harvest for all the good work they do. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, you've heard some people say ampleharvest.org. Our proper name is actually ampleharvest.org, not Ample Harvest. So remember that gap that you saw there? This is a different look at it, and this bothered me for a long time. We know hunger is in every community. We know gardeners are in every community. We spent a couple of years trying to figure out what was wrong, and we came to a realization that we were missing the boat with Native American reservations across the country. The map on the right shows Feeding America's Hunger map. The map on the left shows where Native Americans are largely living. The darker the blue, the greater the percentage. If you look at the green here, you can see how the reservations and our pantry map overlap, and you can see we were missing the boat. And with the help of a tribal elder who's a decade-long friend from the Lakota Nation in South Dakota, we rebuilt ampleharvest.org to support Native American reservations. We had realized that our model of food pantries having to be nonprofits didn't fit in necessarily those communities. We had realized that some reservations like the Navajo don't have street addresses and many don't have high-speed internet. So ampleharvest.org in Indian country, which is now rolling out across the country, was built. Here's here on the Navajo Nation, there's no street addresses. I can't guide a gardener without having an address. We fixed that. This is places, I'm sorry, across America that don't have zip codes. We fixed that. And we didn't fix the zip codes, of course, but we worked around that. And areas where the internet infrastructure is just terrible, and that's being worked on, but we worked around that too. Native Americans, by the way, do more gardening per capita than any other segment of the United States. Just look at that. 32% are doing growing vegetables as compared to, example, 28% of the white population. And they are growing, they're buying more plants and seeds. 68% are using seeds, for example, for growing. So the opportunity was really huge, and we really wanted to build on that. So remember, the theory of impact is that we can't do that alone. And this is part of the partnership that we have with them. One thing I wanted you to see how the growth of the impact, because this is not a one and done. Once a gardener is donating, they continue to donate and share, the awareness of it. So when somebody makes a donation to Ample Harvest, this was an analysis done by the Harvard Business School. Look at year number one, you'll see, for example, 200 pounds donated in the first year, but that grows over 20 years to 61,000 plus pounds simply because of the viral spread of the program. And that's not something I should say during the pandemic, and I avoided that. Every presentation needs an ugly slide, and this is it. But the one thing I want you to focus on, the bottom number. According to an analysis, if every gardener in America knew they could donate food, and if every food pantry in America was accessible to them, the nation's healthcare costs, the bottom number, would decline by nearly $58 billion a year due to improved healthcare. Now, we've had some really wonderful friends and supporters across, but I thought I would share one more.
The response to this initiative has been overwhelming. I mean, all kinds of faith communities have been stepping up. Muslim community leaders are hosting sports tournaments to encourage young people to get active. The Jewish Community Centers Association is working with JCCs around the country to grow gardens and to get fresh food in underserved areas. And they're creating early child wellness programs. Groups like the National Council of Churches have joined with an organization called Ample Harvest to help gardeners donate fresh produce to 4,700 of their local food pantries.
This was Michelle Obama speaking on the second anniversary of the White House initiative called Let's Move. And yes, she said Ample Harvest, and I didn't push back, but for everybody else, it's ampleharvest.org. So these are our partners. The White House, Bonnie Plants Feeding. We work with a wide variety of people and organizations across the country to help support the work that we're doing. And by the way, the lower right, you see all the religion issues, symbols. We are tightly aligned with the faith community because 70% of food pantries in America are based in the house of worship. So we're not faith-based, but we partner with the entire faith community. So if you want to learn more about ampleharvest.org, visit ampleharvest.org, or just click on the QR codes. And I want to thank you all. And I focus very much on staying on time here. And we do have some time for Q&A. So I will turn off the screen share. But again, thank you very much for this opportunity to present ampleharvest.org. And I hope that you'll make sure the food pantries in your communities join ampleharvest.org, and the gardeners in your communities learn that the solution to hunger is in their backyard. So thank you.
Thanks so much for the conversation here. We've had a lot of great questions coming in the Q&A. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about if other small food businesses and or grocery stores are able to donate to the pantries, and talk a little bit more about that process. We had 3 or 4 questions about that.
Yeah, the answer is yes, they can donate. That's not our focus, but anybody who wants to use ampleharvest.org to find a food pantry can, including a store, including a farmer. As a matter of fact, in the early days of the pandemic, when there was a lot of disruption in the food system, we reached out to small family farms across the country, considering them to be like big gardeners. So the answer is yes, they can. But our outreach is focused on America's gardeners. We have the blessed gift from Google of almost $500,000 every year of outreach to the gardening community. We lean heavily into that. But again, if you're a farmer, if you're a farmer's market vendor, and at the end of the day, you've got extra food, if you're a store, come to ampleharvest.org, find a food pantry, and absolutely donate the food. The key thing is that the food not go to waste and get to those who have the least access to it.
Great. We had a few other questions come in around making the connection between food pantry participants who may be experiencing food that they haven't eaten before. And you talked a little bit about the info sheet in terms of, what is kohlrabi and all of that. But curious about what kind of educational tools might be available for why to eat fresh food and how to prepare the foods once they're donated.
Excellent question. Well, the sheet touches on it a little bit, but the how do you prepare the food is outside of our mission. I've been a stickler from day one that we have a very narrowly defined mission, and we stick to it. So we don't tell gardeners how to garden, and we don't tell hungry families how to cook the food. There's a wonderful organization called bread.org that actually works with food programs across the country, helping people learn how do you prepare food, and that's their mission, and that's the work that they do. So if somebody has a question about that, bread.org would be may be able to help the food pantry. My glib answer to that question, honestly, was especially when I first launched ampleharvest.org, if you have questions about the food, ask your grandmother. There's a good chance she's going to know. But reality is, my prime concern was that you, the hungry person, know what it is you're getting, kohlrabi, Swiss chard, whatever. And then from that point on, whether it's on the internet or from bread.org or a friend or whatever else, you can figure out how best to use it.
Great, thank you. They're wondering about the school lunches. Can school lunches be donated?
Generally speaking, this is going to be very much driven by state and local health codes, but as a rule of thumb from my experience, prepared food can be donated if it has not left an industrial kitchen. So for argument's sake, whether it's a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a school program, if the food is still in the kitchen and hasn't been exposed to the people in the lunchroom, for example, in many cases, the soup kitchens that are on ampleharvest.org will accept it. But if it's, if the lasagna's been put out and half of it's been taken, generally speaking, it won't be donated. That food should not, however, go to waste. Remember, the EPA and USDA have a food hierarchy, a food use hierarchy that people should adhere to. The top most important one is people eat food. After that, the next step down is it's fed to farm animals. Then after that, it goes into this composting, biomass, and then garbage. So certainly, if there's food that's available and the local healthcare code says that, no, you can't give this to a food program, find a farmer. And by the way, for those of you who have chickens, my experience, and I have chickens, they'll eat anything. I mean, they're basically pigs with feathers.
Great. Nice to see another chicken owner here. Can you speak a little bit more to the term of innovative disruptor you mentioned?
People look at very conventional solutions. They really do. I mean, the solution to hunger isn't more food. because we already have plenty of food and we're not using it. The real thing that people should be looking at is, how do I better use the resources I have? And the bulk of the food system is focused on get us more food so we can feed more people. And I believe the answer is use the food we already have. It requires thinking differently about a problem. And again, I'll give you another analogy. Some people, if any of you are boaters and you're on a boat and it's filling up with water, you may think, or the average person may think, that the problem is the water that's filling up in the boat. I'd make the argument the problem is the hole in the bottom of the boat. Fix the hole, and then you deal with the water. So it's looking at a problem from a very, very different way. And again, Uber and Lyft did exactly that. They saw people looking for rides and vehicles, people who could pick them up, as an opportunity, and they just brought the two of them together and created a whole new transportation solution. And AmpleHarvest.org sort of does the same thing in its own disruptive way in the food sector.
Great, thank you. I know we've talked a lot about how to work with gardens, gardeners, but have you guys also worked with libraries?
Libraries?
So there's in the question and answer section, looking at libraries that have been looking at supporting access to food pantries in their communities. So I'm not super familiar with it, but this idea of other community places being hubs to kind of connect the dots between the growers and the pantries.
Let me tell you one place where libraries do come in. There are an increasing number of seed banks at libraries. In my own library, I live in a small town in northern New Jersey, has that. I've gone to the store, I've bought a packet of tomato seeds, maybe 20 seeds in, and I've only got room for planting 10. I've got 10 seeds left over. I can go to my library and donate those remaining 10 tomato seeds, and maybe somebody else had some extra, I don't know, cucumber seeds, and I take them. So the library is a hub. A library, the seed bank of libraries can be a hub for an exchange of seeds, so that people can not waste the surplus seeds they got, and they can play and experiment with seeds of other crops they've never thought about trying. But generally speaking, from my understanding and from what my experience is, that libraries are not in the food business, although they have cookbooks, of course. But as a rule of thumb, the seed banking is a real. And if your library doesn't have that, by the way, you should ask the people who run it, can we set up a seed bank? It takes up the space of a shoebox, basically. And you just simply keep the seeds organized however you want.
Wonderful, thank you. This has been great. We have a few other questions coming in, and we'll answer those as we go. Gary, we definitely wanted to thank you for your time. And thanks everyone for great questions.
Thank you, everybody. And it's been a delight chatting with all of you. If any of you have questions, want to reach me directly, just email info@ampleharvest.org. And please come to the ampleharvest.org website, check it out, and let your gardening friends across America know the solution to hunger is in their backyard.
Thank you so much, Gary. This was amazing. I love the idea of Uberizing hunger. And I do think that our last discussion, everyone who is around for the very last conversation that we're our farm to pantry discussion, is going to be very interesting to you, Gary. So thank you so much for your time. So at this point, we're going to head to a break. We'll have about 10-minute break. The first part of our conversation was really about big picture. And when we return, we're going to really get to some local examples. So we're excited to do that. So please, as you are having your break, we're going to have a series of slides with some resources. Those resources will be sent to all registrants in an email as well. But take a look and explore some of the really interesting work that's going on here locally in the Chicago area. So we'll go ahead and pause recording. Be back in 10. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed your break and those amazing slides of resources that are local. So please enjoy those. And again, those will be sent to all registrants. As I mentioned before the break, we were really focused on big picture before the break. Now we're really going to focus on local examples. So we're going to focus on one that's right here in DuPage County. Our next speaker is Lindsay Zimmerman. She's the president of Sustain DuPage, which is a local nonprofit focused on sustainability through food, creativity, and knowledge sharing. She's been leading their quarter-acre communal garden for 8 years and building community through teaching and experimenting with organic and sustainable gardening techniques. She is the co-founder. She and her co-founder actually received the 2021 Changemaker of the Year award for their work. So welcome, Lindsay. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen. So like was just said, I'm with Sustain DuPage, and we operate just within the boundaries of DuPage County. I am going to be moving through my slides fairly quickly, so if you do see something that is on there and I didn't touch upon it, please ask me in the Q&A and I'll get to it at the end. So we had this wonderful introduction already, but just to go over it, yeah, I have been within our gardening program for the last 8 years. We're just starting our 8th season. I've been on our board, and I'm also the current president. I have a background in both regenerative, sustainable gardening, conventional agriculture, and then also training through the U of I extension. But most importantly, I like to talk from a place of someone who's been completely transformed by the agroecological process and what it means to be involved with your community. So I'm going to be speaking as an advocate. So the question is, like, why the suburbs? When most people think of doing this agroecological work, they think in the city, or they have to go out to the country to find these sustainable communities, and the suburbs are completely overlooked, which is a real shame because a lot of good work can be done here, and so many people are really looking for that connection. So we have this kind of saying of love where you live, and we want people to really engage in the communities where they're at within the suburbs. The nature is here, the desire for connection, and actually the ability to do agriculture. And a lot of people think that the suburbs are going to be resistant to sustainable change, that agriculture doesn't belong here, or that there's going to be a lot of issues. And yeah, there are some struggles, but also some amazing things can be accomplished. So what Sustain DuPage tries to do specifically is shift the culture of the suburbs into a sustainability culture. So it's sort of, when you say I'm going to change an entire culture, that's a pretty lofty goal. But what we believe is that you can't change the culture outside of yourself if within your organization, you're not reflecting those values. So these are some of the values that we maintain and how we operate. And there's a lot of them here, but what I really want to draw attention to is our horizontal structure. We found that the sort of mandated top-down structure of most 501c3s didn't really reflect how we want to work as a group in a community in a democratic and consensus-making process. So we've actually started converting over to and operate as a worker self-directed nonprofit where the people making the decisions are those with the most skin in the game, our organizers, and they are supported by our board. So we are a 100% volunteer organization. So that means everyone from our board members to our casual volunteer are all volunteers. So that means 100% of our funding goes towards our project. So what Sustain DuPage does is we have people in our community who are passionate about sustainability, agriculture, all of these different agroecological concepts, and we give them a platform and an umbrella to become community organizers within their community and around these topics. But because this is non-compensated, and we believe that we don't want nonprofit work or agriculture to be an exploitative process, that we have a strict rule with ourselves of accountability that we only engage to the level that it is sustainable within our own lives. So that way we're not burning people out, we're always happy to be engaged, and we're not taking advantages of people's will to work with us. And so we also have a membership system where membership can be granted through donating of 50 hours of your labor and your volunteer time, or you can do like it's a $60 donation a year. And those members who they get like extra perks and other kinds of things that we try to reward that engaging and contributing to us. So at the core of all of our programming that I'm going to talk about soon, it really comes down to relationships. And so through all of our programming, we try to strengthen 3 major relationships, and that's with our relationship with nature and our ecosystem, our relationship with everyone around us in our community, and then finally our relationship with ourselves. And through that transformative process, becoming better people. And so we believe that sustainability is a team sport. So this is, I think, a very appropriate quote from Aldo Leopold. But what we really want to do is also show that our community is not just people, but it also includes nature. And that's what we really try to strengthen. So these are our 5 focus areas. So our mission project, we have 5 areas where we think that sustainability and agroecology will take place, and this is what we want to do. And within all of these areas, these are individual projects that people have stepped up to organize. So we have our food and garden hub, we have our reform, we have knowledge share, rewilding, and creativity. And like Liz was showing in her slides, all of those different components of agroecology. Most of our programs hit most of those, but together, working in a synergistic way, we check all the boxes. So I'm going to talk first about our food hub. So that's our gardeners, our seed cache, and our community cooking project. And so that's sort of like our seed to feed process. And that's sort of a synergy between crop production, the cultural foodways, and then our seed stories and local adaptation. So what is the Gardeners Project? This is the one that I lead. So we teach agricultural nutritional literacy. We empower our volunteers with this fundamental agriculture knowledge. It's hands-on experience with all these different sustainable and regenerative techniques. And so our garden acts as a classroom as well. And we sort of show how agriculture can fit into your daily life within the suburbs. We like to experiment and try new things, and it's very much learning from each other. And then we bring land access to people who may not have it if they're in an apartment building or their growing conditions aren't good. And it's also about having fun. So I like to say our main 3 crops are gardeners, and then second is community, and number 3 is food. And if you take care of those first 2, the last one sort of happens automatically. So we have our garden is on a 1/4 acre on the grounds of the Theosophical Society in Wheaton, and we grow around 2,000 pounds of food from volunteer effort 2 days a week. And I say community a lot, but we're actually a communal garden, which means that the entire garden belongs to all of us. And those who participate make decisions. And as comfort and competency strengthens, we encourage people to step up and take on sort of passion projects, even within the garden. So this is sort of showing that we have a wide range of ages in our community of people who participate. And so we learn from all these amazing different perspectives and lived experiences. And also we encourage people to, like, if they're passionate about something and we're not doing it, to step up and like, hey, I think we could do this. And it's been a really empowering way to work. So we teach all of these sustainable different techniques, like, you know, what is no-till? What does bio-intensive look like compared to biodynamic? And all of these different things that people have questions about, we show that in practice. Do we do just one of them? No, we do a whole variety of things, but we let people make their own decisions for their home gardens and decide what is best for us. So this is an example of us working together. We have a section of our garden that we reclaimed from invasive reed canary grass. It had flooding issues. We use indigenous mound planting practices here to not only keep flooding off of downstream from the property, but also grow really productive food on almost like dry land practices. So we showed different between our regular production beds and also indigenous practices too that have been in play here for thousands of years. And so we don't actually have a lot of outward sale of our agricultural products, but we do have an internal market that we call our members market. So our food goes 100% to either our programs, our people who are actually working in our garden, or we have them like our member market for people who have already invested in us. It works almost like a CSA. They can come and pick up on the member markets their food as well, even if they're not involved in our program. And then we also like to stress collaboration between other organizations. So we've had, with local seed libraries growing out varieties that are going to become rare, or we work with, this was the Resiliency Institute and the COD installing fruit tree guilds, and then the Experimental Seed Network, we're showing people that you can grow rice in DuPage County. So all these really cool projects we all work together and we can all benefit from those collaborations. And so even within the garden program, people can step up and take a lot of really cool ownership over something. This is our compost crew. We had a volunteer, Dr. Stasia Richter, who said, you know what, your compost really isn't, we could be doing more here. And she was so passionate about it that she made this entire program. So now we're bringing in waste from out of the campus. So we work with like local coffee shops. We had a brewery, even old vegetables from food pantries. Sometimes they come here, and then also though we encourage people to leave their leaves at home on your ground. If you're going to pick them up, please bring them to us, and we use them for compost, for mulch, all these different kinds of things. And now we're starting to look at making our own seed starting mix from leaf mold. So this is a very active project, and that's one of our really big success stories for people taking ownership. We really encourage bringing nature into our garden. These are our only full-time volunteers, and they're constantly working there when we're only there 2 days a week. So we try to really appreciate and instill that in our volunteers, that this is definitely a cooperative exchange. And so this is a hibernacula. This is just one of the things where we have a place for our critters to overwinter, like right in the garden. And it's a really great place for us even to like put nature, like little toads and things that have found their way into other places. They can still have a home here, just maybe not where we don't want them. So I just wanted to, with this slide, showing that you don't have to work and do labor in our garden to be a part of our garden program. Conversation, meeting people, using the garden as a place to grow community, that's also part of this program as well. So I'm going to talk about community cooking. So it's about sharing traditions and preparing meals from local, seasonal, and sustainably grown foods. And so that sort of completes the learning arc. So here we're growing the food, and then let's show how to cook it. We share cultural meals together, techniques and recipes, sharing knowledge about how to prepare these things. And we also try to reestablish underappreciated local food resources. So that's both foraging and other resources that aren't being used correctly that could be amazing food experiences for people, and also leveraging the power of community to facilitate food processing. So this is how our events sort of go. We get together, we cook together, and we eat together. And on the right here, you can see us trying to preserve indigenous food practices and seeds, so they can, every year, they're still being grown here and adapting to our local climate, so they always have a home within DuPage County. Again, here's foraging. We're surrounded by food and people see it as weeds. And we're trying to make that educational and that connection that these are delicious foods that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years, and actually how to engage with that and grow it and why you should, because it's so good. So you can see some of the salads we've made for some of our local community cooking there. You have the purslane in there, and it's absolutely delicious. We also use the garden as a place for community cooking, whether that's, pressing local, our crab apples and grapes, or cooking on an impromptu rocket stove. We have a lot of knowledge transfer within our garden space. And then also just teaching, we don't grow citrus in DuPage County. However, we do have green grapes. And so we are teaching how you can make verjus, which, it's not citric acid, but it's malic acid, and you can get that tang. So we're people can experiment with what we do have in ways to replace things that they're more familiar with. So I want to talk about the seed cache. So this is building food sovereignty through the practice of saving and sharing seeds. And so we're developing localized varieties which are highly adapted to our region, and we can use in our garden and other associated gardens. Partnering with local seed libraries to restock and regrow vanishing varieties. So that's our grow out crew. And then we have One Seed, One Community to teach methods of saving seeds to our greater community, one seed at a time. So you can see this is from our grow out crew. We actually received the first year we tried it, 23 pounds of return seed back, which is phenomenal. And so that goes back to seed libraries, our own library, and also some of our community cooking. This year we're doing Amish snap pea. If you're interested in learning more, we're going to be at the Morton Arboretum at their seed swap next weekend. So please sign up. It's really fun. And then when you sign up, you can come to our seed saving social, where everyone at the end of the season brings the seeds they've been saving. We give them to other organizations that are here. We are eating food. We're celebrating gardening and community. It's a lot of fun. And then here you can see us teaching seed saving techniques through a group and through individual processing and just passing on that knowledge. Also, we're now starting to work with the Wheaton Library to have both a seed library as well as a seed starting, and so a seedling swap. So that's one of the things we're doing. And then this culminates with our Great Tomato Taste Test through all of our projects where we sample a whole bunch of tomatoes, and it's really fun. So I'm going to talk about our rewilding project, which is protectors and our native plant rescue. So protectors is how we do the ecological side. We're nurturing our landscape for the benefit of diversity of our native plants and wildlife. We're teaching invasive plant removal and how to do native seeds, restoring habitat, creating native harvest and forest woodlands, reintroducing people to our native habitat here in our landscapes and building those connections, and then bringing nature back into our agricultural spaces. So this is Quentin, that he started our project. This was the first year after doing a clearing out buckthorn. This is the native harvest woodland that's directly adjacent to our garden. And so we've seen such an abundance and an effect in our production area because of this restored landscape. So the biodiversity, the pollinators, the birds, the butterflies that are coming through now have really helped us. And also now we have this food forest next to us that allows for foraging. Like you can get food from the garden, you can get it from the forest, and that's something we like to teach. So as we remove this buckthorn and these things, like we're not just burning them, we're actually sequestering the carbon, and we're using them for other aspects within our program. And so that turns into like maybe wood chips or other kind of materials, or in the worst case, it's being used, it's burned, but for community cooking. And so you can see them in place in some of our garden beds here. And then these are some of our work days. In the lower left, we actually was able to rescue an original vineyard on the property from the 1970s. It was completely overgrown with buckthorn. And last year we harvested over 200 pounds of grapes after restoring those vines. So we also have other programming. This is Pat Armstrong. She, local legend, is teaching us all about these amazing plants we have in our area and all of our different ecosystems of DuPage County. And then we also like to engage, this is us at dawn at the highest point in DuPage, experiencing a beautiful sunrise. And it's like just these fun, transformative things we can do as a group. So now I want to talk about another aspect of agroecology, which is our reform. And so we have DuPagers organized for sustainability, and that's our local food policy and food and garden reform. So we want to protect our human rights to practice sustainability in DuPage County through grassroots policy reform. And so this is us participating on a local level to protect those rights and bringing like existing activist groups together, including government bodies, and seeing if we can work together and make change, and also keeping our community informed. This started in 2016. We had a symposium of as many of the municipalities as we could in DuPage County, their environmental commission or committees, to talk about what they were doing so we can work on things together and see the issues we were facing as a whole. And since then, we've worked on, dark sky initiatives with West Chicago. On the left, you see we were talking about the right to grow, Nicole Virgil's struggle to grow food in Elmhurst. We were helping host some events and get information out. Also backyard chickens. On the left, Anton and his partner David, they are instrumental in getting chickens going in Villa Park. They're part of the pilot program, and now that's become effective and put in place. So these are some of the things we're doing through our policy. And then we have our knowledge share group, which is Turner's reading group and our traditional skills. And so this is a space for discussion about sustainability, literature, media, current events, guided discussion topics, connecting through experience and expanding and idea exchange, and challenging our perspectives and having them grow and being very open-minded. So, some of the books we've read and discussed and have come up in conversation. We have a lot of in-person discussions as well. We have some food. We talk about all these things. We expand our understandings. We learn from our neighbors. It's really fun. We do it in gardens. We do it in homes, libraries. And then we've also used our garden as a space to, this was a documentary screening. And so, we're learning about regenerative agriculture in the middle of a regenerative farm. And so it's really things like that where we can connect and make those community connections for people and have those discussions. It's really important and very fun and actually a part of the agroecological sphere. Traditional skills, this is our founder, Andrew. He is, teaching how to do biochar. And then this is on the right, we have wattle hurdle out of our willow coppice. And so these kind of skills that aren't always being used, but are really fun to do and can be really useful, we're passing those on. And so finally, I want to talk about our creativity group, which is Creators and Open Minds Night. And so that's artistic expression in the service of sustainability and social change. And social change and equity is a large part of agroecology as well. So Creators is using art and creativity as a tool for cultural transformation, sharing traditional skills, but also like creative upcycling and recycling. And then Open Minds Night is a place for our community to practice their poetry, spoken word, music in a non-judgmental atmosphere. And so you can see here just some examples. This was tie-dye with black walnut dye that we had done, using the garden space for observation and journaling. We had like a little crochet knit circle, but also our garden is a place to, like, we sometimes turn into galleries. So you can have people moving through there in an artistic sense, and it sort of plays double duty. Here we had someone like with the recycling and the upcycling, doing visible mending, where, mending a t-shirt, but in a way where it became art and art inspired. And that's one of the things we did this past year. That's Stephanie. And then we have some examples of our Open Minds nights where people, it's a really amazing thing. And some of the stuff our community can do with their beautiful art and how that's shared. And so those are some really amazing events. And then here is sort of social activism and justice. We have the BIPOC stories from the community, from the suburbs. This was an event from, I think 2 years ago now, where we used our garden space as that large gallery, the Open Minds, the spoken word, and bringing community together and, activism. So thank you so much. I did sort of speed through that, but if you have any questions, you can reach us at sustaindupage.com. If you're interested in joining us for any of our programs or volunteering, these are our most active projects here. So, David for Community Cooking and Protectors, Elena for Seed Cash, reach out to me for gardening, and then Stasia for Compost Crew if you have any questions. Otherwise, any inquiry can go to just our info@sustaindupage.com. So we hope you check us out, and thank you so much. I'm sorry, Allison, you're muted.
Nope, that's much better. Great presentation, and thanks so much. The questions are rolling in. There were a few questions about, obviously this is the DuPage Environmental Summit, so we've really focused on DuPage focused work, but people are curious about other counties. Will, Kendall, DeKalb, and others. Are folks, do they know of other similar organizations doing stuff like that in those areas?
We did early on have, I think it was Kane, someone tried to do this or wanted to do this in Kane. I'm not exactly sure how well or if that ever took off. So what we're actually, we're all about like the open source thing. We don't mind like that abundance mentality. Please duplicate whatever we're doing. We will be completely transparent about everything from finances to how this works. Recreate this wherever you want. You can even put this in the next town. We just be happy that people are doing the work and getting as much out of it as we are. So I'm not sure how many organizations are doing it exactly like we are in which counties, but maybe you're the person who's going to get that started yourself. So I'd say if you have questions, if you want to do it, please talk to me. We'd be so happy to share how we do things and take it back to your community, because there's no reason why like everyone else can be doing this. This is not anything new. It's just really fun and people are just being reintroduced to it. So please start it up.
Hey, one person was asking, can I just show up and see the site? Or what's the process to get involved and exposed to the work that you all are doing?
Great question. And the answer is yes. So depending on right now, Protectors is active. So if you're interested in the habitat restoration, you can see our site during the winter. During the summer, we're there just Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings. Come in, it's a drop-in event. You don't have to like reserve a space ahead of time. You can get a tour, see how we work. And then we have a lot of other engagements and things on our calendar if you want to see how that goes. Our garden planning meetings are starting up next Wednesday at the Glen Ellen Public Library. So if you want to get involved from the very beginning, please join us. You do have to reserve a seat for that on Eventbrite. But otherwise, yes, just stop by. You can let us know through email. If you want to come by and get a special tour, we can maybe do something outside of those times. But yeah, that's exactly how it works.
Great, thank you. And I'm assuming that's where folks can find out more about the Open Minds Night. There was a specific request around that one.
Well, Open Minds Night, we haven't had one since last year. That was run by Andrew Van Gorp, who is the founder of Sustain DuPage, and he has stepped down to work on another project. And so right now that isn't as active. However, when we do have the call for it, other people will still create events under that banner. However, it's usually not active until the summer or until someone's like, hey, you know what, we really should have one of those and we can get that together. So because we are a volunteer organization, we don't have all of our programs active at one time. And sometimes there is an ebb and flow to it. So if you are interested in doing a lot more of those open mind nights or passionate about it, please talk to us. And so we can actually get more of that programming out there to you.
Great. And then there's a request here to see if we could have the Sustain DuPage share their reading list. Sounds like there is some momentum for all those titles that you showed. And if there's a chance we could include some of those suggestions with our follow-up.
Oh, yes. So our Wendy Vernon, who last run the project, she has an amazing list, and I'll get that to you. If you want to contact me via email, we can send that to you with our entire list. And some of those were even things that we weren't reading specifically, but during our conversation groups, we're like, hey, this book changed my life, and I really use this book, and this is my favorite like foraging book. And so that was part of the exchange as well that were up there. So we'd be happy to share those resources with you.
Thank you. And our last question here before we transfer, you talked a little bit about the seed saving and preserving. Can you talk about, especially for some of these more rare varieties, where do they go afterwards? How are they distributed? Are they internal, or what does it look like beyond that?
That's an excellent question. And so our Grow Out crew, we work specifically with the Downers Legacy Seed Library in Downers Grove. And so those varieties that are becoming extinct within their collection, and they have an amazing collection, by the way, so please check it out. Our Grow Out crew, we grow them and then we return them. So it goes specifically to that organization. However, we keep a little bit for ourselves as the people who grew it for our own gardens. But yes, so please reach out to Downers Legacy Seed Library. They have such a rich collection of seeds. It's really amazing. There's stuff there that you can't get commercially or anywhere else in the country. It's really, really good.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Lindsay. I have to say those photos that you had of the food are beautiful, and now I'm hungry. So thank you for that. And I will be following because that tomato tasting looked phenomenal. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We're really excited to see from a community level all that our DuPage residents can get involved in. And our next speakers are really going to kind of dive into that individual gardener, individual homeowners, and what are some ways that our gardens can help support native plants, wildlife, food resilience, and food resilience. So thank you. And I would like to welcome Kyla and Kat. Kyla Muhammad is our Will County Program Director at the Conservation Foundation. And she's co-presenting with Kat Gertz, who is the Administrative Coordinator for the Kane DuPage Soil and Water District. So thank you, Kyla and Kat.
Thank you. We are just going to get our slides loaded here. All right. I am super excited to be joining you today, and I know goes the same for Kat as well. Absolutely. We are going to be talking about conservation at home and how agroecology benefits your home gardens. So specifically, we'll dive into changing our approaches to flower and veggie gardening. We'll also run through some different easy ways to make climate smart garden choices. And we'll cover a few different assistance programs to help you along the way on your journey. So starting with, when we're talking about agroecology in the garden, we need to really rethink our some of those conventional approaches that we might be taking to our flower and vegetable gardens. Starting with flowers, let's really think beyond just ornamental non-native flowers, and there's compelling reasons to do so. The first of which is the fact that native plants are resilient and they support pollinators. Native plants and insects are the ones that existed in this area prior to European settlement. So they've been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And as part of that, those plants and those insects really co-evolved together. And they've developed these special relationships where they really rely on each other for their survival. So native plants support native pollinating insects at various stages of their life cycle. And, one thing I can't emphasize enough here is if you look at the bottom, 1 out of every 3 to 4 mouthfuls of food that we eat and the beverages that we drink, they're delivered to us by pollinators. There we go. So, if you're also a flower gardener, you might be wondering, why have an edible landscape? And I think there's a number of compelling reasons. The first of which is increased food sovereignty and security. When you're beginning to grow your own food, then that makes it so you're less reliant on that traditional food supply. Connie touched on this a little bit earlier too, but when you're growing your own food and you're taking control of those growing conditions and able to harvest and eat the food immediately, you can really maximize the nutrient density of crops and eat your food when it's at its freshest. And not only do you benefit from having food to eat in your garden, but so does the wildlife. And there's other benefits for wildlife too, including habitat, cover, and having a number of host plants for those beneficial insects that you're attracting. And there's just the fact that it's rewarding and fulfilling, everything from watching your garden evolution throughout the season to deepening those nature and food connections as well. Oh, sorry about that. So when we shift from thinking about flower gardens into some of those conventional practices for vegetable gardening, you might be thinking, why garden organically? And that's because synthetic pesticides don't just affect the pests. Pesticide use results in fewer pollinators and beneficial insects, and therefore less crop yields. There's also the fact that it's destroying those beneficial soil microbes, which have been proven to have health benefits when you're exposed to them. And those microbes are helping to build out to that healthy soil. And there's a number of human health concerns that folks touched on earlier as well, related to repeated exposure to those common pesticides. Another thing to keep in mind is that, gardening organically is not just for your vegetables, it's for growing fruits, herbs, and flowers too. And something to keep in mind is that if something is not eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. So another area to rethink when we're talking about both flowers and vegetables is the traditional reliance on growing annual plants is sort of that primary base for our flowers and veggies. So this chart here is really just kind of looking, if we do a head-to-head comparison of annuals versus perennials and then even native perennials, how do they match up? And the answer is, whether it's for flowers or for food, those native perennials really win out from a number of standpoints. Everything from the fact that there's that minimal soil disturbance to the fact that those native perennials have maximum resilience for drought and flood tolerance too. So ultimately, what it comes down to is you want to work with your garden, not against it. So we need to think of and design our gardens as a garden system. And that starts with putting the right plant in the right place. You want to really, before you put a plant in the ground, understand what are the growing conditions that it likes and work with that. And when you do, you're going to have less maintenance as well as fewer problems in your garden. And as we talked about, when you add those natives and you're gardening organically, you're allowing nature to do its thing and find that ecological balance so it can take care of a lot of these problems and issues in the garden without having to get into using these other amendments and fertilizers and pesticides. And then, when we're growing more of those edible perennial plants, not only are we going to have more food in that plant diversity, but those native edible perennials are going to be less fussy to care for. So when we bring it all together, it's a synergistic system where, when you have the native pollinator gardens working with the organic vegetables and those perennial crops, you're going to have that increased pollination, which means more abundant harvests. You're supporting healthier soils, which ultimately is going to mean healthier plants. You're going to have increased natural pest control working on your side, as well as creating that healthier garden ecosystem. And you're going to have that biodiversity, which ultimately means more garden resilience. So now, Kat and I, we're going to transition over to talking a little bit about climate change. And, this is something that increasingly is on more and more people's minds, like what can you do to help? And people don't always think about the fact that there are a number of things that we can do at home in our landscapes in terms of doing climate smart changes that can help. So this graphic here is one that we produced here at the Conservation Foundation, and it's touching on some of these different areas. So we're just going to walk you through those and talk about some different things you can try in your own landscapes. Starting with water conservation, which is critically important. So water conservation, when you're capturing and storing rainwater in place, it builds resilience against droughts and floods. And when we're talking about the flooding piece of that, when we're holding on to that more of that rainwater, it's going to reduce that stormwater runoff, which can sometimes overwhelm our storm sewers and cause that flooding. On the drought side, when we're experiencing these prolonged droughts and we have that water already stored in place, we can use it when we need it the most. It's also important to conserve water to make sure that our water supply stays sustainable. So when we're doing these practices, it's putting less demand on our freshwater rivers and lakes. It reduces our need to use that municipal water for our gardening needs from the hose. And then when we're incorporating those water conserving designs that will hold and absorb rainwater and allow it that sufficient time to infiltrate into the soil, it can help to recharge our groundwater stores.
All right, so let's dig into the how of water conservation. A storm that can produce up to a 1/4 inch of rainfall is going to yield about 200 gallons of water off the roof of about a 1,200 square foot home. That storm water is now going to flow really quickly down to through your gutters to the nearest waterway, like a storm drain, a ditch, or any other waterway that's nearby. Along the way, it's going to be picking up pollutants off of the ground as it goes, things like soil, fertilizer, pesticide, plain old trash, animal waste, something to think about if you own a dog, road salts, and there's others. And this all going to be running down and deposited into our waterways. Rain barrels simply installed under the downspout of a gutter is going to collect this rainwater from your roof, which would otherwise become that runoff. This is a really simple addition. It reduces soil erosion and local flooding caused by this runoff. When you think about 30% of our average daily water use is for outside. Using the water that you collect in a rain barrel for your landscaping and gardening can really help to save the water resources, reducing the amount of municipal water that you're using and you're paying for. Here's a fun fact. Rainwater is often softer than tap water, and it doesn't contain chlorine, so your plants are going to be a lot happier with it. Next up, let's talk about rain gardens. Many of us have depressions in our yard or our landscape that's going to collect stormwater runoff and snow melt. When we plant these areas with native grasses and flowering perennials, we're going to develop multiple benefits. Native plants will slow the runoff, filtering out pollutants as they go. They're going to improve the downstream water quality and allow that water to infiltrate deep down into the soil and recharge those aquifers that Kyla was talking about. Rain gardens also provide some other benefits, creating wildlife habitat and even carbon sequestration. They can be a really beautiful and cost-effective way to solve a really common landscaping problem. And then a bonus, they're going to attract important pollinator species, but you're also likely to attract dragonflies, birds, and toads. These guys eat mosquitoes. In fact, a hungry dragonfly can eat upwards of 100 every day. Let's talk about some action items. Well, the Conservation Foundation, on their website, they've got some information about purchasing rain barrels. And while you're there, you can check out some of their resources about planning and installing a rain garden. And at the district, you can learn about applying for funding assistance and installing a rain garden.
So next, we're going to touch on another critically important area, which is protecting the soil. Healthy soil is absolutely paramount in having a resilient ecosystem. I think Russ did a great job earlier, really emphasizing the importance of having healthy soil. It's a foundational layer that supports the entire food web. And those healthy soils really do take time to build. And this is also important because of the fact that topsoil erosion has been a huge problem, particularly over the last few decades. And as we see these climate impacts, taking place, it's getting even more intensified. So the question is, what's needed for in order to build that healthy soil? And there's a number of components. The first is having a diverse mix of living organisms that are always going to be present in that soil for nutrient deposits as well as nutrient transfer, and to build out that aeration in the soil and to start to build out soil structure. And that good soil structure, as well as having that ability to hold water for living organisms and plants, it's critical for their survival and for them to thrive. And then the last major component, which was touched on a bit earlier, is you need those regular deposits and the replenishment of organic materials to continue to feed that soil.
So often when we envision a farm, we imagine a tractor or a horse pulling a plow. And in fact, it has been shown that this really is not the ideal method if you're really important, if soil is important to you. Tilling your garden is going to break up that complex soil structure and it leaves it bare and exposed, and it'll be struggling to absorb water and more prone to erosion. No-till gardening allows the soil to keep that complex structure, which allows the water to be absorbed and infiltrate really deeply rather than pooling on the surface, carrying the soil away along with much of the nutrients. There's many insects and microorganisms that are living in those top couple inches of soil. And these are essential to the soil and plant health. A diverse microbial community is actually going to strengthen your soil and make it more resilient. Some of these soil microbes even have a symbiotic relationship with your plants. They will gather around the plant roots and feed on organic matter there, and in turn provide nutrients that will feed the plants. Tilling will destroy the symbiotic kind of relationship and make it really hard for plants to take up their nutrients. Leaving the soil in your garden as undisturbed as possible allows these communities to thrive and to continue their important work of helping to restore soil nutrients. We just have a deer outside the window here. It's really kind of cool. Bottom line, no-till really does equal better quality soil. So here's a great tip. Never leave your soil naked. It's going to leave it vulnerable to soil erosion, moisture loss, nutrient depletion from runoff, compaction, and that soil microbial community is going to be lost. Keep your soils dressed. Use cover crops. This is going to increase your soil organic matter, improve the fertility, providing excess nutrients as that cover crop dies back, increases the water holding capacity, prevents erosion, nutrient runoff, compaction, and can even help to suppress certain garden pests. All right, so what about that messy autumn nemesis? Falling leaves. Sanitizing your yard of nature's seasonal bounty will actually eliminate vital wildlife habitat and remove nutrients from the landscape. Nutrients that, by the way, were free. Blowers and mulching blades that you use to remove these leaves, they contribute to air pollution. You're using fossil fuels there. And again, another not so fun fact, landfills have received about 10.5 million tons of yard trimmings in the year 2018. We really don't need to fill our landfills with yard waste. By contrast, leaving the leaves helps to protect the soil, suppresses weeds, retains moisture, increases the nutrients for free, and one of the most valuable things that you can do for supporting pollinator and wildlife species, providing them the cover that they need to survive the winter. We've all noticed the temperatures outside lately. So leaving those fallen materials are going to be good for the wood frogs, the Luna moths, the woolly bear caterpillar, American toad, firefly, American bumblebee, carpenter bee, so many more. Action items. You really don't need to completely surrender your yard to the wilderness. Just cut back those hollow stems, leaving about 6 to 18 inches standing for the overwintering nesting sites, and gently rake those leaves to the garden beds under the trees that they actually fell from. They're relying on that as a food, and then into other designated natural areas in your yard.
So next we're going to talk about a little bit more with native plants and biodiversity. We've touched on this already a bit, but you know, stressing that incorporating those native plants that thrive is super important, because again, these are the plants that have been in the landscape for hundreds, thousands, and in certain cases of years. And so they're going to grow here regardless of whether we're tending to them or not, as long as, you know, they find those right growing conditions. So because of that, you know, once they're established, there's no watering or fertilizers like what can be required within a number of non-native plants. You're going to have that increased crop pollination because of those special relationships with the native plants and our native pollinators. You're going to be it's going to be supporting birds, bees, and our critical wildlife populations, which, you know, many of which have been declining over the last few decades. And then they also are better able to stand up against some of these different extreme weather impacts that are becoming more common that we see through climate change. And in terms of the biodiversity, when you're diversifying your plants, having a broad plant community is going to give you more climate change resilience. So if there's a particular weather event that happens, if you had a monoculture, it could just wipe out everything. If you have biodiversity, then it's, you know, some plants might be affected, but others really won't be. You're also going to be attracting more beneficial insects because those insects are seeking out particular plants. And so if you have a whole polyculture of plants, it's going to attract a broader array of those insects. And as we touched on before, you're going to be continuing to help build out those healthier soils too.
All right, be honest. What's growing in your yard? If you're seeing a monoculture, then you can expect that you're upsetting the natural balance of soil nutrients, moisture holding capacity, and microbial communities. And you're not providing any balanced nutrition for the creatures that are living nearby. But a diverse polyculture with companion plantings provides a whole host of benefits to support a healthy ecosystem, and it can even increase your crop yields. Too often, our landscapes in the US consist of exotic and invasive species. And how they got here, that's a whole nother summit. But these plants are typically poorly suited for this area's growing conditions, requiring more resources like water and fertilizer and pesticides to actually thrive. They'll deplete the soil nutrients, degrade the soil, and crowd out those native species while decreasing the biodiversity. Invasive species negatively impact the food web of ecosystems. In fact, 42% of threatened or endangered species are at risk due to the invasive species that have come into their territory. Now, using landscaping with native species can help to create a native habitat that does provide shelter and food for the native wildlife, promoting the biodiversity with very low maintenance and require little to no supplemental water or fertilizers. The deep roots of these native plants also help to improve water infiltration, reduce soil erosion, and sequester carbon. Kyla will talk a little bit more about this in a moment. Native species, flora and fauna, have co-evolved over thousands of years, and they seamlessly support each other here with very little need for human intervention. So what are we going to do? We're going to identify the species that you've got in your garden and remove anything that's invasive, minimize or even remove any exotics, and replace them with native alternatives. Design a new garden. It doesn't matter what size, it can even just be containers, using primarily native species.
Next up is talking about climate-friendly lawn care. So why is this particularly important in this discussion about climate? It's because turf grass is everywhere. So how we manage it and managing it in climate-friendly ways is important. And when I say it's everywhere, we're talking about 40 million plus acres of turf grass in the United States. So ultimately, that means large climate impacts, depending on what type of lawn care choices we're making. Currently, if you're looking at the high use of lawn fertilizers, as well as gas-powered maintenance equipment, those types of things are polluting waterways. They're creating those algae blooms that Liz was talking about earlier in those dead zones where, because the water is choked out from oxygen, nothing can survive, as well as, emitting increased greenhouse gases. Turf grass is one of the most irrigated crops in the United States. And so because of that and its impact on water and conserving water, how we manage it is critical for conservation. And then there's, if we think about this on a practical level, as we see more severe weather events as a result of climate change, trying to maintain turf grass is going to be harder and harder. And part of the reason for that, if you look over at the graphic on the right, is, just even from the root system, the turf grass has really short roots. So when you're talking about, flooding and trying to, be able to withstand that holding water for long periods of time, and then when you're talking about drought and, trying to not burn, it's harder for turf grass versus our native plants, which have those deeper roots, which are still able to tap into the nutrients in the water from deeper levels in the soil. It just makes it harder to survive those types of conditions.
80% of American homes have turf lawns. And to deal with this non-native species that we're trying to keep alive, we are throwing 90 million pounds of fertilizer and 78 million pounds of pesticides on them every year, in addition to 9 billion gallons of water a day being used for landscape irrigation. 30 to 60% of our clean, potable water is being used on turf lawns. The maintenance of these turf lawns produce far more greenhouse gases than the lawn could ever actually absorb with those tiny roots that Kyla showed us. And another not fun fact here, fossil fuel lawnmowers will produce as much pollution per hour as 11 cars. So what are we going to do instead? Well, there's lawn alternatives. These allow for more biodiversity on your property, and they decrease the need for fertilizer and pesticide use, contribute to the healthy soil microbial communities, require less maintenance, and decrease those gas-guzzling lawn equipment. So what can you plant instead? Let's see. Red fescue grass, buffalo grass, blue grama grass, ferns, moss. There's a variety of sedge species, liriope, ground cover plants like white clover, creeping jenny, creeping sedum, and creeping thyme. So there's a lot of options that have actually a lot more positive effects on the ecosystem. Okay. Chemical fertilizers. These tend to be overapplied because they just don't work very well. So only about 30 to 40% of the nutrients in these chemical-based fertilizers are taken up into the plants, and the rest is just lost to soil erosion and runoff. Kyla mentioned those dead zones. Extra nutrients then do run off. They get down into nearby bodies of water, creating an overgrowth of plant life in there, which depletes the available oxygen, resulting in the death, actually, of aquatic wildlife. This is called eutrophication, and it's a scenario that's becoming alarmingly more common and severe. Chemical fertilizers also destroy the microbial and insect communities living in the soil, which are vital to the health of the soil and plants, and in turn, your crop yields. And additionally, as if it wasn't a bad enough story, 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions can be put right to the chemical-based fertilizers. So instead, let's talk about biofertilizers. In contrast, the application of beneficial associated microbes is an environmentally friendly and cost-effective alternative to the successive use of chemical fertilizers. They actually improve soil fertility and long-term soil health, which really is our goal, stimulating nutrient uptake and increasing your crop yields. Many of the microbes that are found in these biofertilizers help sequester carbon in the soil and reduce global greenhouse gases. And finally, there's those pesticides. Pesticide use can have its benefits, but it also has risks to both the environment and human health. As Kyla stated earlier, contaminating soil, water, and the vegetation. They can be toxic and cause harm to all organisms, birds, bugs, beneficial insects, non-target plants, and us. So, and then additionally, as target species develop a pesticide resistance over time, higher concentrations, stronger pesticides are required to just receive the same results, which does perpetuate the cycle of pesticide resistance. In contrast, when we talk about a flexible and adaptable program for pest management that uses 5 steps: inspection, identification, monitoring, action, and evaluation, using biological and environmental monitoring, as well as a knowledge of the pests and the host species biology, this can effectively and sustainably respond to pest problems. Some of these practices can include altering surroundings, adding beneficial insects and organisms, growing plants that actually resist pests, disrupting the development of pests and preventing the pest problem from developing in the beginning, and disrupting insect behaviors, and sometimes when it's truly necessary, using an insecticide or a pesticide, I'm sorry. So what are we going to do? We're going to turn off the sprinklers, get rid of the fertilizers and chemical pesticides, retire the gas guzzlers, and switch to a turf lawn alternative. We're going to start a compost bin and make your own biofertilizer. Your garden, your yard, your landscape, and your kitchen are sources of fabulous things to put into a compost bin and use as biofertilizer in your property. And research integrated pest management plans for pests that are found on your property.
So as we're discussing all of these different actions that can be taken, it's really important that we stress that everyone can participate in climate and eco-friendly garden practices, and that they're applicable at all scales. When we're talking about how you're growing, whether it's in ground, and you've got a small to a large area, you could do it in raised beds, including there's ADA accessible options. If you want to do containers, you can do everything from maybe a series of small containers to some larger 30-gallon deeper sizes when we're talking about, doing like a prairie in a pot. There are shared outdoor areas of residential buildings. You could do this on a deck or your patio. And another sometimes overlooked spaces are those open areas of community spaces, including schools, places of worship, workplaces, etc. And so, think about, even if it's not at home or even at work, where are some of these other places that you spend your time that you might be able to rethink the approach to the landscape?
So decide what scale works best for you, build it, buy it, or maybe even reach out to some of the many community gardens. We heard about some today in DuPage County. Practice the principles of agroecology, no matter what the scale. It is an investment towards a more sustainable future. Adopting water conserving, soil protecting, and biodiversity supporting practices is going to ensure a future ecosystem healthy enough to provide for all of us.
So another thing that you can do is you can support conservation. Conservation is for our communities, it's for the wildlife, and it's for the broader ecosystem. Conservation groups and organizations are dedicated to keeping our water and our air clean, our soils healthy, making green spaces accessible and abundant, and ensuring that this is the case for generations to come. And there's all sorts of different types of groups and organizations that you can support. There are forest preserve districts, soil and water conservation districts like the Kane and DuPage one, land and water conservation organizations like the Conservation Foundation, environmental advocacy groups, regenerative agricultural farms, particularly ones in your area, watershed groups, as well as agroecology focused organizations too.
All right, so we're going to take some action. We're going to adopt sustainable practices. We're going to be an advocate. Go talk to family, friends, neighbors, and get them involved in adopting sustainable practices. Connect with local conservation organizations. Vote in local, federal, state organization conservation efforts. Volunteer with or donate to conservation groups and organizations. Maybe even start a local work group. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to the district. We'll be happy to connect you with like-minded people.
So the last area we're going to talk about is, putting that agroecology into practice and some different assistance programs to help you on that design and implementation journey. Starting with conservation at home and conservation at work. These are programs of the Conservation Foundation, and it's really designed to support and celebrate when people are doing earth-friendly landscaping practices and creating that wildlife and pollinator habitat in their landscapes. So conservation at home is obviously in the places where you live. Conservation at work can apply both to the places that you work as well as other places within the community where you spend your time. Also part of this is adopting water conservation and storm management practices. It's part of our program. We offer no-cost site visits, advice, resources, certification as well to acknowledge your efforts. We'll put out a yard sign so you can broadcast to everybody proudly about the work you're doing for the ecosystem. And you're also part of a broader conservation community. It's almost like a club. The other thing with conservation at home and conservation at work is for the Conservation Foundation, we administer that in DuPage, Kane, Kendall, and Will counties. But if you live outside of those counties, we do have other regional partners who administer this program. So if you do go to our website that's shown on the screen here, and you're outside of those counties too, it'll take you to and connect you to regional partners who administer this as well.
I actually got my house certified conservation at home last summer. I'm really excited about it. I have my little sign up front. And okay, so soil and water conservation districts do also offer a variety of cost share programs. So funding provided through something called the Partners for Conservation cost shares. This part of the Illinois Department of Agriculture. We partner with them and can help landowners with implementing some of these agroecological principles. But of course, there are some rules. No work can be started until it's been approved. The IDO does require a one-to-one match with landowners. It's funded at 75% of the either actual cost of the project or the state average cost of the project. So let's look at some of the example project types that we could fund. We could also fund a rain garden. Additional rules there, they must be held in place for a minimum of 3 years. And we do have a large or a small scale cost share rate for that. We can also help fund pollinator gardens. These must be kept in place for a minimum of 5 years, and we have either interseed or broadcast seed options. Now, stream bank erosion is a major source of sediment buildup in bodies of water. This will threaten the soil, the water, and the wildlife. Decreases the depth and water holding capacity of lakes and reservoirs, reduces stream channel capacity, and this can increase the likelihood of flooding, and additional stream bank erosion. So the Stream Bank Stabilization and Restoration Program provides cost share assistance to landowners who have these eroding stream banks, such as the one on the left there. Projects have to be completed within 6 months of project approval, and the landowner will be responsible for maintaining this project for up to 10 years. This kind of hardscaping that is cost shared here, employs engineering techniques that will limit stream bank erosion and includes things like stone toe protection, steering barbs, bend wear wares, rock riffles, and more. And that, with a little bit of riparian greenery planted in there, that would be a wonderful, secure stream bed for the future. So we think you might have a bunch of questions. Here are some resources that we have. We have our website at the district. We can also email us or call us, and you can come out and visit our office and talk about some of the different cost share opportunities that we have. We like getting company out there.
And if you'd like to get more information about conservation at home or conservation at work, you can go to our website. You can also email us, and we have a really rich YouTube channel filled with different resources and how-to videos. So I encourage you to check that out as well. There's both short videos as well as some really in-depth webinars on a variety of topics that can help you get started.
All right, thanks so much for this great presentation. We had a question about where is the best place to get access to plants, both native plants and vegetables or other things that folks would want to do, because we know your Home Depot nursery isn't always going to have that. Do you guys have pointers?
Well, that actually brings up a good point too. When we're talking about sourcing your plants, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting them from plant nurseries that are not going to be treating them with the pesticides that, even if you grow it organically, when it comes to your landscape, if they've already been pre-treated with some of those things, those chemicals, that can impact and adversely impact those pollinators and things that you're trying to attract. And in our region, there's a few different native plant nurseries, one of which that comes to mind is Possibility Place. There's also, I'm trying to remember the name of the other. Oh, there's Midwest Ground Covers, and Midwest Ground Covers, their plants will be distributed through a number of different local plant nurseries. So if you see their name on a pot, then that's safe too. There's also the Growing Place that's out in this area. They've got a couple of different locations. And I think on our Conservation at Home website too, that there's a link to other places that you can source some of these plants from.
Yeah, and absolutely. Please take advantage of the local native plant sales. Conservation Foundation is involved. We have our native plant sales. I just remember that you want to get a plant that comes from as near to our area, geographically, as you can. Don't be sourcing something from Florida.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I'll give a shameless plug here for the Conservation Foundation plant sale, which will be on May 11th. Shop with us, shop with anybody. We're whatever it takes to get those native plants in the ground and getting you eating your yard. We're happy to have you. I'll also share, we have a few other resources popping in here. We have one question coming in regarding the storm, the stream bank restoration. Are you aware of any other programs that folks could look to if they're looking for other resources to help with the erosion issues?
We work with the IDOA and with the NRCS on a variety of programs. If you have a specific concern, by all means, give us a call. We would love to do a conversation with you and come out and take a look at the property and see what would best solve the solution, the issues that you're having.
Great, thank you. So one last call, if there's any other questions coming in. I feel like you guys have been so thorough. And we still have a lot of folks on here still listening. So we're very excited as we look out our snowy window to think about the planting season and to get started. So thank you so much for your presentation here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kat and Kyla. I loved all the very specific information and key takeaways that everyone can take whenever they're trying to think through how to build an ecological system within their gardens while growing food. So that was really appreciated. Thank you. So, now we want to transition a little bit to local business owners, so we can talk about the economic impacts of the economic opportunities with agroecology. Frankie Garcia is the owner of the Chicago Street Sunflower Company, and he's also a environmental commissioner, sustainability commissioner for the city of Elgin, and also a member of TCF's Next Generation Council. So thank you, Frankie, for joining us and telling us your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. So I started this company in, well, where's my presentation? One sec. In 2022. So here we go. Uh-oh. One second. Okay. So I started the company in 2022 during my class at College of DuPage. So I have an associate's from there in horticulture as well as a permaculture design certificate. One of my projects was actually installing that fruit tree guild that sustained DuPage with Lindsay. So that was fun. And as Amy mentioned, my other roles include Elgin Sustainability Commissioner. I'm on the Conservation Foundation's Next Gen Council and the Illinois Specialty Growers Association Urban Ag Cohort. I'm also a continuing class at College of DuPage pursuing a bachelor's, and I worked there as a horticulture assistant, as a student worker, and I'm the horticulture club president as well. So a bit about the company. Like I said, I started in fall of 2022. It's a 4-acre urban farm in Elgin, Illinois. We're just on the east side where Chicago Street starts. We focus on market garden produce, cut flowers, live plants, and other similar products. We follow sustainable practices and agroecology principles, as well as the design principles that I learned in my permaculture courses. We also have a retail shop located inside Dream Hall 51 in downtown Elgin. It's just 4 miles away from the farm. Dream Hall offers interior plants, floral designs, and other merchandise that's created from the farm and then brought down there. We also host seasonal sales, workshops, and other events through Dream Hall. And we provide interior plant consultations, plant installations like with annuals and perennials, and other things like that. So with the farm, it's family owned and it's private currently. We hope to have people on site this year, but we've bought it about 10 years ago. It was an old pasture and paddock that an older couple had kind of let go. So now we're kind of removing the invasives and working with what's there, which is mulberries, wild black raspberries, and other products like edible flowers and things we can use for teas and stuff of that nature. We also produce nursery stock and seasonal plant production. So like some of you were asking about the native plants, we'll propagate some of those and then sell them through our seasonal sales in spring or in fall. We do interior plant production as well. So that will just take house plants and kind of propagate them at the farm, get them ready. Once they're established, then we move everything to the shop. Besides that, we're hoping to grow with our new high tunnel this year, hydroponics, and with some other methods as well. So here's kind of the layout that we have going. It doesn't look like your traditional farm with, row crops and things like that. Me being the solo operator that I am, I don't really have time to be doing a lot of cultivation. So I like to work with what's there, namely the mulberries, the wild black raspberries, and things like that. So here's some of the other trees we have, the alders and the birch. We'll use those for floral designs, for bouquets as well. In that shrub layer there, you can see a lot of the bush honeysuckle that we're fighting. So that's pretty much all around the property and needs to be addressed. Here's some of the vegetables that we produced last year. So poblano peppers, some other snacking peppers, some tomatoes, and some of the houseplants in the background as well. For a lot of the starters, I like to get them from College of DuPage where I work, because we start everything with Johnny seeds, and by the time it's growing season, everything's nice and ready. So it's pretty perfect. Here's some of the wild black raspberries that I forage from pretty much everywhere on the property. They are abundant and almost invasive. So they look as good as they taste. So I'm definitely excited that those kind of come for free. Here is a shot of some of our tomatoes and herbs. And this is a shot I took using just a flatbread from Target that you can get. So it just goes to show with some local ingredients, you can create some really beautiful dishes right at home. And like Connie was saying, they have more nutrition, better flavor, and so much more. Here's some of the houseplant stock that we source from College of DuPage and some of the stuff that we grow ourselves as well. And then here's a shot of our sunflowers. Here's some of the edible flowers on the left, the violas there. And then on the right, we have some of the daffodils that we harvest for cut flowers and bouquets. And then additionally, here's some other edible flowers that we'll find on the property. So the left and right pictures are off of some maple trees that we have. And the center picture is off of magnolias. So those are edible, and we plan on drying them this year to use for teas and other things as well. So Dream Hall. So Chicago Street Sunflower Company operates a retail and flower shop out of Dream Hall. It's a community hub in downtown Elgin. It's located just 4 miles from the farm. It's actually pretty perfect. We pull out of the driveway, we turn left, drive 4 miles, and then on another left is Dream Hall there. So we offer the house plants, cut flowers, floral designs, merchandise, and other items. As I mentioned before, we have the seasonal sales, workshops, demonstrations. This past year, we did a wedding for a friend of mine from high school, and for their wedding, we hosted a bouquet making workshop for her and her bridesmaids. So they had a lot of fun doing that. And then we also feature a lot of our master plants there and biophilic design interior pieces for the community to enjoy when they visit. So these are our master plants that stay there, and they're going to stay there for the foreseeable future, just to kind of provide the vision of what we hope other spaces can transform into, namely nature-inspired spaces. Dream Hall also serves as a food processing hub for Kane County. So that's pretty exciting. The couple that owns it, Kevin and Yesenia, they have food processing equipment as well. So I'm excited to work with them in the future on that. So here's the outside of the shop. If you're in downtown Elgin, you'll see Dream Hall's sign really big up here. And then we have our sign in the window. You'll see some plants outside. And then this was the space before we moved any plants in. So as you can see, it's nice, it looks good, but is missing some greenery. And this is the mezzanine level. So Dream Hall has about 3 restaurants that operate out of it, a full bar, and then a specialty coffee shop Viator. So those are open all the time. And then there's a number of event spaces that people can rent out as well. So those are the before pictures. And then here's after we started moving things in. So the way we have everything staged, it pretty much is in its space in the building, and then we just tag it up. You can grab what you like, bring it to the front counter and pay, or you can pay through a QR code on your phone. It works pretty nice for me being a student, and yeah, I mean, not having to be there 24/7 really helps. On the tables there, you can see we have some of our cut flowers, and then here's a view from above. So on this wall here where the coffee shop is, we'll have plants staged on this kind of rack. These bigger master plants, some stay, some go. Here's one I drove about 8 hours round trip to go get from Iowa to go bring to the shop. That's a favorite of the community for sure. And then some of the house plants that we have kind of dotted throughout the space. And then, as I was mentioning before, we have our seasonal sales, and these ones will pop out to the patio floor, or for our winter poinsettia sale, we did it indoors by the bar. Here's some of the other merchandise. So the clothing is actually really popular with the community. Everyone is always on me about making more hoodies and shirts. So that's always nice to see. We saw gemstones to go with the plants and the kind of natural inspired themes. The gemstones are drilled in house as well too. And all are also a favorite of the community, which is nice. So Chicago Street Sunflower Co. and Elgin Public House. So Elgin Public House is a local restaurant and bar in downtown Elgin. They're at 219 East Chicago Street, a little bit closer than Dream Hall. We partnered with them in summer of 2023 to feature our mulberries in the cocktail of the month. So they did their take on a mulberry sour, and they used our mulberry sauce, JMO Black, and a number of other ingredients, and it was really popular. So it's being added to the menu next summer, and then we're gonna keep it on there permanently, which is pretty awesome, especially being that they're so close to the farm. So yeah, there it is on the left in all its glory, and as you can see, we're empty on the right, so I'm hoping to get more to them soon. And then local community work. So as I mentioned before, I'm on the Elgin Sustainability Commission. We've actually worked with the Conservation Foundation to provide our rain barrels for our program. River Life Elgin is our local, I guess, river-oriented and natural areas inspired group. So they kind of focus on what we're working on with natural spaces by the river or kind of anywhere in Elgin. YWCA will sponsor some of their raffles and events. Wild Ones is another one I'm involved with, and we'll work with them with the Start in Your Yard program. So that's kind of our local Start a Native Yard over here in Elgin. Side Street Studio Arts, we partnered with them to sponsor and present their music festival this year. And DNA, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, has been great help for us, just promoting our sales and pretty much keeping us in the loop on whatever is going on in downtown Elgin. So this is a poster from our music festival that we sponsored. So as you can see down by the bottom here, we have a bunch of other local sponsors, which is nice. And then organizations and memberships. So Illinois Farm Bureau, we're associated with them, Cook County Farm Bureau, Conservation Foundation, Illinois Specialty Growers Association, Illinois Stewardship Alliance has been a great help as well. Thank you, Liz, and everything that you guys do. And then NALP and ILCA as well for our local landscaping organizations. And that's pretty much all I have for you.
Great. Thank you so much for showing your photos, telling the story about that. And we've had a few questions rolling in here. Can you talk a little bit more about if you're directly selling any sunflowers from the farm as well?
Yeah, so right now they're not in season, but we will be selling them as soon as I have stock available, and that'll be through Dream Hall. So it'll be pretty much the same way the houseplants will work. You'll walk in, I'll have a station with cut flowers that'll be self-service. You'll be able to grab either that or pre-made bouquets and purchase them that way.
Right. And can you explain a little bit more about this, the King County Food Hub concept overall? It seems like there's a really strong network working together.
Yeah, so
more background.
So with that one, originally what Dream Hall was a collection of restaurants and like food businesses that would use that space to process food, whether it be cottage food or if you're a whole like restaurant operation, and then sell your product from there. Since COVID passed, I believe they stepped back from that, but they still have all the equipment, which includes produce washing equipment and a bunch of things that farmers would need. So after talking with Kevin, they plan on rebuilding something like that and then inviting either local farmers or local growers to come in, process there, or local restaurants as well.
Great, wonderful. And you definitely gave us like the polished version, and everything sounds like amazing and beautiful and very inspirational. Could you talk to us a little bit more about like, how was it to start your own company and that process been for you?
Yeah, absolutely insane. I think what helped was in school, I created the feasibility study and the business plan, which was like, okay, well, this is actually something I can do. And the scale I started at was just cut flowers. Like I never had plans for the plant shop or anything else. That all just kind of fell in my lap as I was doing my work in Elgin. But for the most part, I think it was tough at first, especially with like an agriculture, like food kind of company. You want to make sure you're checking all the boxes, and you know, like we were talking about, there's a lot of red tape that you don't want to kind of step over. So I guess just all the covering all your bases and things was the most difficult part. But besides that, it's been pretty fun to say the least.
All right. Thank you so much, Frankie. I appreciate the community building approach to the work that you're doing. So thank you. Yeah. Our speakers, for our last speaker, we wanted to really focus on impact. All of the speakers that you've heard this afternoon or this morning have illustrated how individuals can build this ecosystem. Individuals and communities are starting to build this ecosystem of businesses, organizations, and growers. And we'd really like to now talk about how can this help our communities, and what is an example that is already up and running. So our next speakers are Dan Lobus. He's the Vice President of Land and Watershed Programs for the Conservation Foundation. And he's joined in conversation, no slides, with Scott Lamort, who's the Vice President of Business Development for Itasca Bank and Trust. And they are going to talk about their farm to pantry pilot. So thank you, Dan and Scott.
Thank you very much, Amy. I am aware that, Scott, you and I are standing between our audience and their lunch.
Yep.
So this is a very, very serious responsibility we have. And actually, some of Frankie's slides made me hungry. So
right, me too.
Oof. But you know, I think we all work in this field, and we all know that partnerships are really what make things work. And I think this is a great illustration of partnerships all over the place. But it provided the genesis for this farm to food pantry, farm to pantry program. And I just wanted to kind of talk with you, Scott, a little bit about how it all came together. And I know, Scott, you work for Itasca Bank and Trust Company, and the bank prides itself on being a local community bank. But what does that really mean? What does community mean to you?
Sure. So let me first off say thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate being a part of this program. For those of you who don't know me, I worked on staff at the Conservation Foundation for almost 6 years. The organization means a lot to me. I was flattered to be asked to be a part of this. I'm very fortunate that I work at a place that values collaboration with organizations like TCF, and that's how this whole opportunity came up. So thanks again for having me. And to get right into your question, Dan, you asked what a community bank is. There is a very easy corporate speak answer to that. And every bank that has a TV commercial that calls itself a community bank gives you that corporate speak answer. You know, we value our community partners and we like to be collaborative and rah-rah. And look, the reality of that question, Dan, is that if you ask every bank, they'll answer it differently. My own answer to your question is a community bank is a bank that's locally owned and operated that invests a part of its profits back into its communities. And that's kind of how we roll here. Itasca Bank and Trust is a smaller sized bank headquartered in Itasca, as you might expect, with a second location in Roselle, which is where I'm sitting, about 100 yards from Linford Winery. So in case of emergency, I run due south, and that's how we do things here. But yeah, the answer to that is a community bank should be a bank that works with community partners, nonprofits, civic organizations, you know, as you might expect, in a way that's impactful on both sides. If you do this right, it helps the community and it helps the bank, right? So that's how I answer that question.
Very good. So as part of that whole package of community support that the bank does, I understand that the bank supports a number of food pantries. Can you kind of tell us a little more about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So our bank just finished its 75th year in business. So we've been around a while, you know, pretty hyper local to the communities around us. So the northern part of DuPage County is sort of where our relationships grew from. And when you become a part of those communities, you start to work with organizations like food pantries. So if you were to look at a map, like let's say hypothetically, Dan, if you knew an organization that had a giant map of Chicagoland with dots all over it, like you might have seen before, if you looked at that map, you would be able to put dots up and down a corridor, essentially from O'Hare Airport almost to Schaumburg. And those are the communities where our bank has been volunteering and donating and supporting local food pantries. So these are, would be like 5 pantries total. They cover 14 or 15 different suburbs, but essentially you could draw a line through Bensonville, Wooddale, Itasca, Medina, Roselle, and then into Addison, Villa Park, Elmhurst, Oakbrook Terrace, those sort of east and north parts of DuPage, and a little bit into Western Cook. So we've been doing that here at the bank for a long time. And that sort of laid the infrastructure for us to be a little more impactful in 2023.
Sure. In your work with the pantries, and I understand that you're on the board of a pantry too.
I am.
What have their biggest needs been?
Sure, that is like the question most often asked of me when I tell people I'm on a food pantry board. So just to be clear, so everyone understands how the food chain, no pun intended, works in the food insecurity world, local food pantries are typically supported by a food bank, which in the western suburbs is Northern Illinois Food Bank in Geneva. In the city can be the Chicagoland Greater Food Depository. So you have a bank, and then you have that bank supporting pantries at the local level. I tend to think, until I got a little more education, that helping a pantry meant getting a can of green beans or a can of corn and as many cans as you can get. That's how you help a food pantry, right? Isn't that how it works? And then I learned the reality is, in society as we are, the goals of food pantries have changed from let's get you basic canned goods into let's get people the nutrition they need. And in order to do that, you really need to find them protein and dairy and produce and the things that are harder to get than just a can of corn. So when I talk to food pantry directors, they're out scouring sources of donations for those kinds of things: eggs, milk, meat, fresh vegetables. And there's a difference between a food pantry getting fruit and vegetables and getting good fruit and vegetables. And I'm sure Dan will probably end up talking a little more about that. But by the time donated fresh food gets to a pantry, sometimes it's close to or at its expiration date. So how does a pantry effectively source fresh things they can give to their customers? Because frankly, these are the people who need it the most. The people who need that nutrition are the underserved populations around us. So it's a tough nut to crack, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem.
Yeah, particularly in the last few years. I mean, we've had the pandemic.
Yep.
Recent inflation. I imagine the needs of the pantries have really grown in the past few years.
100%. And I think you would hear that if you ask the food bank as well as the individual pantry level. What you're seeing sort of as a phenomenon across society, and it's no different here in the western suburbs, is an increase for demand of services and real problematic supply issues. The supply chain in getting certain types of foods, like the kinds we mentioned, is getting harder and harder. It's harder for the food bank to get them. It's harder for the pantries to get them. So we have to figure out ways to be a little more out of the box. And I think that's where our partnership grew from.
Yeah, so I wanted to congratulate the bank on its 75th anniversary. I know that you haven't been there the whole time. You're not yet 75 years old.
Almost.
Yeah. But how did the bank change its support of the pantries in honor of their 75th?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because there's a great story to that. When the bank turned 50, 25 years ago, they decided we should do something a little extra. It's a special time. Let's do something. So they spent that year doing some things. They gave away a little more money than they normally would. They picked out some agencies to support that they knew well, and they did a little extra. And the PR from that, frankly, was favorable. Put the bank on the map a little bit. Got in the newspaper. And 25 years ago, that's the early internet times, it wasn't like you Googled things, you read the paper. So, if you got the Daily Herald, that was important back then. So fast forward 25 years, we put a committee together at the bank. I was fortunate that I was asked to be a part of that. And we were sitting around and we said, okay, what are we going to do this year? And part of the community bank essence is getting your community involved. And so we sat and we debated a little bit about what could we do. And we came up with the notion that what we were going to do for that year should involve all of our stakeholders, that being our employees, our board members, our community partners, everyone we could get. Let's find a way that we can make an impact. And we talked a little more and realized, gee, we're supporting all of these pantries. And right about now, hunger seems to be the biggest problem in front of us. So is there a way we can step up our game a little bit, right? So we came up with an idea that what if we put together an employee volunteer program as a piece of it and sent our people literally out, sleeves rolled up to our pantries and help our pantries get things done. And it turned out our pantries needed that. So that was a big part of how it started was, okay, we can get our folks involved that way. But then that led to, okay, let's get together with our food pantries and see what it is they need. We know they need manpower, they need help that way, and we can provide that, but we really don't know what they need. So we had a little mini summit of food pantry heads and we sat down with them and said, what do you all need? How can we help you? And the number one thing over and over again was, we can't get produce. And, got a bunch of bankers in a room. What do we know about produce? And a couple of us looked at each other and said, we don't know anything about growing vegetables, but we do know some people with a farm. And that led to reaching out and seeing how we can leverage our connections into something that helps the greater good, right?
That's awesome.
It was.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing to me, Dan, that last year turned out the way it did. I never would have imagined we would come up with a way that a bank could lead the efforts. A bank, frankly, in Itasca could come up with a way to find out how to grow vegetables in Naperville, and in a matter of a couple of days, get those vegetables back in the hands of the neediest people in the communities back on our end of the county. And it's a testament to the Conservation Foundation's Green Earth program that they were able to do that. And I give you and your colleagues all of the credit in the world for being able to step in and say, okay, a little bit of elbow grease, we can get this thing done, right? So.
No, that's awesome. We, as Connie said before, we have been looking for opportunities. We've been asking ourselves the question, is our food reaching everybody who needs it? And for 22 years, we have been an organic farm. The bulk of our distribution is through our CSA program. We've built a nice, beautiful community around that, but that's really a small percentage of the population that can afford to be in a community-supported agriculture program.
So what was the intriguing part about this conversation initially when we had it? What was the intriguing part that made you go, oh yeah, we should jump in on this?
Well, number one, it's an awfully good cause, right? Feeding people with fresh, organic, local food, nutritious and tasty food, to be honest with you. The people who, as you say, need it the most, that's intriguing. The other thing is we are a nonprofit. So we are here to improve the quality of health in our communities. And this is, food, as you say, food insecurity. Food is a huge, huge problem in all of our suburbs and all of these villages and towns. And we have been trying to figure out a way to help the communities, to help the people who can't afford good, nutritious, tasty food, help them get it. at the same time being able to feed and pay the people who grow it. So we knew that we couldn't just give away all of this food, because how are we going to pay our crew, our farm managers, the crew that grows it? How are we going to do that? So when the bank came forward and when you made your call and said, hey, got a crazy question. If we put some funding together, could we put together a program to get some organic produce that you guys know how to grow into these food pantries that are feeding people who need it? And, after I stopped laughing, I thought, I think there's something to this. So I appreciate that question very much.
So we knew on our end after we had the initial conversation that we needed to figure out a way to fund this, to find the capital. And if all of you out there are sitting there thinking, oh, that bank paid for all of these vegetables, you're mistaken. It's not what we did. Instead, we went to our commercial customers in the areas around us, in the communities where we do business. And we went to them all and said, listen, here's what we're trying to do. Our food pantries are hurting right now. We need help. Any chance you want to pitch in, do your part, be a good corporate citizen. We need to raise some capital. And if we can raise it every week during the growing season, our pantry will get fresh organic vegetables. And we literally only had one business turn us down. And they had a very good reason for doing that. It wasn't that they weren't interested, they just couldn't do it. Other than that, we had a 100% success in getting investors. All third-party capital, bank pitched in almost nothing to pay for the cost of getting those vegetables done. So we knew what we needed to do to get this done. But Dan, what did you all need to do in the farming operation? Because you certainly weren't planning to provide food for 5 food pantries last year.
No,
right?
that's for sure.
How did you make that work?
Yeah, we had to scramble a bit, as you can imagine. But we had to buy more seeds, of course, more soil, fertilizer. We needed some infrastructure, such as additional irrigation, because we were maxed out on our systems. And we had to buy more yellow bins to put the produce in. We were very fortunate to get funding from DuPage County as well through the ARPA program to be able to put the funds together for that stuff. So we were able to put this program together. We got some funding from Will County as well for a pantry in Bolingbrook. So we were able to supply more than 20,000 pounds of vegetables to the 6 food pantries, 5 in DuPage and 1 in Will, over our 20-week main season, which is awesome. And this is food that's grown organically. It's picked one day, it's at the pantries the next day. It's high nutritional value, tasty, it's good stuff. So we put the systems in place. We had some of them already in place, and this just kicked us over the edge to be able to do a lot more, and hopefully get it to people who needed it.
So I like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell a really quick story. Since you mentioned the yellow bins, it seemed like a throwaway comment, but I have a funny story about that. At one of our pantries that was receiving the vegetables, the executive director overheard a couple of customers who were coming into the pantry for food, and the woman there said to her younger son, hurry up, go to the yellow bins, that's where the good food is.
Mm-hmm.
So very quickly it became known to the customers who utilized the pantries that the fresh vegetables were all in the yellow bins. So kudos to the yellow bins.
There you go. And while we didn't cure hunger in DuPage County, I think for the pantry clients, I think we made a difference. I think they were able.
How much food, Dan? How in total, in aggregate, how much food did you deliver to those pantries?
It was 20,000 pounds went out of our farm, this one farm in Naperville.
Was that like 4 giant carrots?
Yeah, but I think the food pantry clients felt that somebody cared enough to send the very best. Pantry volunteers, we heard stories, felt really proud to be offering the good stuff. And hopefully we'll be able to continue this in the years to come. I know we have funding from DuPage County and from Will County to continue it this season, but we are looking for ways for sponsors and partners to continue this into the future. So I really, really want to thank you and the bank for kicking this off. And I hope we can keep it going.
Oh, we loved it. Were you going to tell the yellow bin story?
No. It's all
Did I
yours.
step on the yellow bin story? Because I
It's
love
all
that
good.
story. And I just love telling it. So
It's a good one.
if I took that from you, I apologize. But
No, all good, Scott. But
I would like to say to anybody out there that has interest in supporting that program, if you would like to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to tell you more about what we did and how we did it. I'm a big supporter of the greater good and figuring out how we all help each other. Look, we're not going to solve hunger anytime soon, but we can all pitch in and do our part. And if I can play a little role in helping others, I'd love to do it. So just let me know.
thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Great. We're just about to wrap up here with our summit, but we did have a few questions come in. One is, what is your perspective on if larger, big corporate banks like Chase or Bank of America, do you think that this is something that they would ever take on and try to replicate in some way? Or do you feel like the community banks have just greater involvement locally?
I would disclaimer myself by saying I obviously have a bias. I chose to work at a community bank for a reason. Prior to working at this bank, I banked at a community bank, and I did that purposefully. I have no knock on big, Bank of America, Wells Fargo type banks, but they are what they are. And if they're going to do something like that, they're going to choose to do it at a higher level. They're going to do it at a national level, at a Feeding America type of level. The more localized the bank is, the more likely that trickle down is going to come to the pantry level. So I applaud banks that work with NI Food Bank and with the local pantry level, literally on the front lines. And we're not the only bank that helps food pantries. I know that. There are enough of us smaller banks still around, but the bigger the bank, the harder it gets to make that impact at the local level. Our bank isn't doing it for PR and marketing. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And our marketing is more grassroots. People are going to tell other people about us, and that's what matters to us. That's harder to do at a Bank of America level. And again, not picking on any particular bank. Great question.
A nice follow-up question to that is, are you guys taking any more applications for new food pantries to join this program?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we support things pretty local to us. So I'm not ever saying no to anything. But our bank, again, we stick to the communities we work in. I would advise whoever's asking that question, feel free to reach out to me. I am not hard to find. Itascabank.com is the website. My picture's on it. You can't miss me. But feel free to reach out by email or phone or whatever works. And I think the staff who know me from Conservation Foundation would back me up in that. I'm a can-do person. I want to help. So I hate to say no to anybody, but I can't sit here and honestly say right now we're looking to add food pantries. I wish we had more money than we do. I'd give more of it away if they'd let me, but that's kind of where we are at today anyway.
And from our perspective, we are open to working with other pantries as long as we can figure out the funding piece.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott and Dan, for sharing that really inspirational concept of, growing food for the people that need it most. And thank you to Allison and Abby and Kyla and Connie and everyone who's worked behind the scenes to make this happen, and Brooke, of course. So from policy to practice and community organizations to homeowners, we hope that you are attendees who will walk away with something tangible that you can do to help build that ecosystem of food for your local communities. And with that, we're going to end our 18th DuPage Environmental Summit. So thank you to our sponsors, DuPage County, the DuPage Foundation, Christopher Burke Engineering, and Bedrock Earthscapes for making this happen. Thank you to all of our amazing presenters. Everyone will get an email next week with the link for this, as well as a bunch of resources that hopefully you can reach out to some of the folks you've heard from, as well as some of the other community groups that are working in this space. So thank you on behalf of my colleagues at TCF and all the speakers and our sponsors. I want to thank you for sharing your morning with us. Have a good day.